Take two. It's House Divided here on the Orangebloods live channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Chad Hastings.
You damn right. Maybe.
He's in lovely Elgin, Texas, where he's always at when he's not at his father's house. I'm doing the show today from Texas Card House on Research Boulevard. You can see I've got like the dealer behind me. Check it out. It looks like somebody's leaning over my shoulder. I'm knocking things over. Maybe I shouldn't do that. All I know is I'm at the Texas Card House. A awesome partner of Orangebloods for almost a decade, if I'm not mistaken, trying to maybe get them involved on the Orangebloods Live project as well, going live today. Come on out and I would say join me, but really just come out and play poker if you want to come up to the Texas Card House today. I'm inside one of their cool little studios that Chad has done many a show at. Way back in the day, Chad, when we started the Yak, I planted the idea and the seed in the heads of the Texas Card House guys that they should be doing shows, podcasts, and YouTube. And they just took it to an entirely new level. So we've got this studio that I'm at doing a little business in Austin today, talking lots of Texas football all day long today here on the show. How many championship players does this Texas team have on its roster? Do us a solid, like this video, subscribe to the channel, do all those things that we ask you to do on a daily basis. We're taking the question that Kirk Bowles used to ask Tom Herman every single year, and Tom Herman really never had an answer any year that he was asked the question for a variety of reasons. And Chad, in the show that we started that nobody mentioned or that nobody ever got a chance to see, the 2 minutes that we were on the air, you mentioned it. Sometimes it had to do with the fact that he didn't want to alienate other players by calling them championship quality and then leaving some guys out. We don't have to worry about that. We alienate people every day. It's kind of what we do. And I think it's a really interesting question, given that this is a Texas football team that has the word playoff mentioned with it on a daily basis and Big 12 championship. What is a championship football player and how many does Texas have? I think it's a really interesting question.
Yeah, and I think in discussing it before the show, I really sort of started to understand the confusion that Kirk Bowles and Tom Herman would create for each other, because you and I interpreted the question differently. Every year when Kirk Bowles would ask that question, I always interpreted it as an Oklahoma question, as in, Coach, the championship that's out there, the first one that's out there is the Big 12, and there's a big old crimson and cream problem in your way. How many players do you have that can help you beat that crew? That's how I heard it. But I think you heard it on a little more of a national level. You thought maybe he was talking about, like, do you have guys that can help you win a natty and compete with best of the best?
Is that fair? I think I always took that question of, like, how many guys on your team can play for anybody in the country? How many of the guys on your team, if you play Georgia at any point on the schedule, who can hang, who can't hang? And it's funny because I once got into an argument about Shaka Smart. I called him a damn good coach. And the words damn good means something different to everybody. Yeah. And I didn't realize that until I found myself in like a monsoon of controversy of what damn good means. I kind of feel the same way about championship players. You and I talked about it a little bit, like as we were putting the show together today. Yesterday when we were talking about Quinn Ewers, and I was asking Anwar, I asked you, I asked the guys on the modcast yesterday. And oh, by the way, Alex Dunlap of Orangebloods.com debuts his show Football with Friends. How could I forget? 3 o'clock or 3:30 today. So how dare I forget to mention at the top that we've got a brand new show on the channel. We're going to turn the tiger loose. Alex Dunlap, who's been doing and hosting a Sirius XM show for 10 years, now makes his way over to Orangebloods Live. I can't wait to see him talking Texas football where he's the lead, Chad. and not the guest, because I think they're two different things. So I can't wait to rewatch the show later tonight to see how that thing goes. But back to the conversation that we're having, we were talking about Ewers, and the conversation was on a 1 to 10 scale. If we start in the middle and say 5 is average, we say that slightly above average is a 6, that we say that very good, let's say honorable mention-ish all conference is a 7, and first team all conference is an 8, and all America is a 9, and then Heisman Trophy, Butkus Award winner, Thorpe Award winner, like that caliber of player is a 10.
The kind of guy that might get considered for halls of honor and Hall of Fame level, and you're never forgetting the guy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What is our interpretation of what a championship player is?
Right now, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead. I was like, before we can go any further, right? We have to decide we have to define what championship player is before we can count how many they have. I've broken the roster down. So I have a very good idea of like the quantity of all of the various areas. Now we have to put a marker down and say, is it first team all conference level players? Is it something less than that? Is it something more than that? And Paxton's asking where I'm at. Paxton, I'm at Texas Card House. I'm in one of their recording studios where they do their YouTube shows off Research Boulevard here in Austin, Texas. So if you want to play some cards, I'm watching people do so right now. I kind of want to play cards. I've never done a show and played cards at the same time, Chad. I feel like I could do it, though.
See, that's one thing. A big difference between you and me, Ketch, is when I did a show there, I didn't feel what you're probably feeling right now because I'm not a big poker player. I'm not a huge card player. So I could go there and do the show and really compartmentalize it. But I know how much you love to play cards. So are you feeling the itch right now?
Yes.
Is there a tingle running down your spine right now?
Not that you're not interesting to me, but I, at the very least, want to watch the hands. And I'm just close enough that I feel like I'm being teased. It's like going out on a date where a woman has her hand on your leg, but like,
right. You can't think of anything else, right? There's nothing else in your mind at that point. Yeah.
No, there's not. Like, I'm just wondering where this thing goes. And right now, it's not going far enough. That's okay. I'm going to be with you for the next almost 3 hours. I'm okay with that. I'm just saying I do have the itch to play some poker. I'm curious, guys in the chat, you guys have heard our 10-point scale. If I say championship players, does that mean guys that have to be an 8? Can a 7 be a championship player if he's just very good? If he's, I don't know, who was an honorable mention all conference player a year ago? Maybe a guy like Ryan Watts a year ago, right? He wasn't one of the best players in the Big 12. But like he could play. What do we think? I'm just curious what everybody thinks the number is. Is it 7? Is it 8? Is it somewhere between 7 and 8? Surely it's not a 9, right? We're not just counting all Americans. But what would you consider to be a championship player? Because whatever that number is what we're going to be counting with regards to who's on the Texas roster.
All right, so Ketch, I'm going to throw up a couple chats here to start. Paxton says 7.5 to an 8. I think that might be a shade low. And then Alan says 8 or higher. That's the neighborhood I'm going to. To me, it's like 8.5 and up.
Wow.
I know you
that high?
I know you in recruiting like to have the discussions about, things between, there's a 5-star, but there's also a high 5-star. There's a, low 4-star, high 4-star, all that. I'm going to say it needs to be like 8 and up would be the low end of where I would go. Nothing.
Well, let's talk about the Texas Longhorns 2005 team for a second. Won a championship, right?
Yep.
Vince Young's a 10. He's a championship player.
Vince Young's a 10. Absolutely.
Justin Blaylock might be a 9. He's an All-American.
I'd put Justin.
But he wasn't necessarily the best lineman in the country.
Justin's a 9. I'd put David Thomas as a 9. I'd have Jamal Charles on that team.
mean, Jamal Charles is borderline NFL Hall of Famer. He's a freshman at that point.
That's what I'm saying. At that time, is he a freshman who's a 9?
At that time, he's probably a 7.5.
Okay.
Because he was not all conference that year. He was not the most impactful running back on that team, on a national championship team, but he's on that team. So Limas Swede's probably an 8. But is Limas Swede a championship player? He catches the touchdown against Ohio State.
Oh, he was that year. Yeah, I'd say yes. That's an interesting guy to start with, because tell the story of them winning that title without Limas Swede.
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. When we talk about, look, Lyle Sinline is a championship player, but I don't know that he was first team all conference. So I'm somewhere in kind of the 7.5 range.
Okay.
That
was my bad.
I'm kind of in the 7.5 range. I don't think because there are too many guys on that 2005 team that I think I would call championship players. And, and they weren't first team all conference. So I think I'm drawing the line at like 7.5, 8.
Okay.
Is where I personally would do it. I kind of agree with Paxton that's kind of where I'm at. This is an interesting comment. He says he'd go 8 and up. Championship caliber players aren't the guys who are supporting players on the team. They're the top players on the team. Is that what Kurt Bowles was asking Tom Herman?
Yep. That's the way I always interpreted it. I always interpreted it as, do you have guys on your team that you can see winning the Big 12 title and taking it from Oklahoma? That's always how I interpreted it. I never thought of it as a national discussion, because I felt like Kurt was asking him about the next step that he hadn't gotten to. For that matter, Mac didn't get to it at the end, and Charlie didn't either. That's what I always thought he was asking him.
Okay, well, hold that thought for a second. I do want to put up the super chat here.
Yeah.
New background. Yeah, we're at the Texas Card House. That's a dealer right there. He is dealing cards. I'm at the Texas Card House on Research Boulevard, one of our great partners at Orangebloods.com. I'm on the road today. They're letting me use their little indoor studio, which is kind of cool. I'm watching poker. I don't think they can hear me. I may yell something out here in a little bit, just a big loud Yahtzee, and just see if everybody's head turns or something like that.
Full house.
There it is. Instead of Yahtzee. Yeah, maybe an actual card slang would be helpful. Sure. Yeah. And yes, I do have on it's an actual clean shirt and everything.
What a great compliment. That's what ladies talk about on the date. Well, how was the date? Well, I don't know. His shirt was clean,
Hey, baby steps.
Right.
I love that I've set such a low standard through the first 2.5, almost 3 weeks of our shows. And it's fair, because I have worn a few dirty T-shirts.
You've done consecutive shows with the same T-shirt. So I think
that's the problem. When you leave the house every day, you think of things like, I need a completely new shirt, because but when you're in your own home all the time,
yeah,
sometimes you don't leave on any given day, or if you do, I don't know. I do need to make sure that I'm not wearing the same shirt twice consecutively on days.
Yeah, you do. Just like I have to remind myself. Like today, I had to remind myself, let's go ahead and take a shower before the show. Let's get a shower mixed in.
I showered at like 5:30 this morning.
Okay. Yeah. Well, see, we're both clean today. How about that? A double clean show.
Hey. It kind of defeats the purpose of showering and then putting the dirty clothes back on. So
that definitely doesn't work. Yeah, that's a bad idea.
Completely clean in every single way. Let me say this though about the championship players, Chad.
Yeah,
where this becomes a really interesting question is if we say 8, if we say they're not supporting players, they're the guys that win you things. If that is what a championship player is, then I think Texas has 7. And what's interesting about the 7 is I think they're the 7 guys that when I was talking about a top 10 list, remember yesterday, I was like, these are the guys that I think if I'm talking about who the best players on the team are, These were the guys that I had ranked above Quinn Ewers, who I can't rank as an 8. I cannot say
I was going to say
today. What's that?
No, he's not championship level for you right now.
Well, I can't say he's an 8. I cannot say that Quinn Ewers, based on everything that we know, is definitively a first-team all Big 12 level player.
Okay.
I mean, that is who he might be before this season is over with. But I think going in, you can't say that a guy whose career quarterback rating is in the 130s and who was having to be babysat by his head coach towards the end of last season. I mean, Steve Sarkisian has admitted this month that there were moments last year where they had to kind of take the ball out of his hands and lean on the running game or else. And it's not necessarily who he will be at the end of 12 games this season, but I have a hard time definitively saying that I know that guy is an 8. I think Texas has 7 players on its roster right now that you could rank as an 8 or above. And the 8 are, they got 2 wide receivers that I would rank as an 8 or above, A.D. Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy, I put in the 9. I'll give Xavier Worthy a 9. Okay. I mean, I can show you stats where he's literally number 1 in every category amongst all of his peers in his age group. So I'm okay with him being a 9. And we saw yesterday he was second team AP All-American. The expectations are that he's going to be a 9 this season. I'll put Jatavion Sanders as a borderline 9. He's at least an 8. He's one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends returning in the country this season.
Mm-hmm.
I'll put Kelvin Banks as at least an 8. He's second team AP All-American yesterday. First team All Big 12. He's going into the season. I think on the offensive side of the ball, those are your 4 guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the defensive side of the ball, Jalen Ford is a 9 based on the fact that he was literally an All-American last season. And then I'll put Jahdae Barron and Ryan Watts in the 8 category. I don't know that there's anybody else on the team that I'm putting at an 8 or above. Now, there's a lot of ways to have this conversation. I don't think there's anybody else in the Big 12 that we feel like has that many. If that's the bar for championship players,
right?
We're setting a high bar. That's not easy to say. If it's not about being a supporting player, it's about being a Mac Daddy alpha. Then right now Texas has 7, and maybe the question is who joins that category this season. Who leaps into that category? How many do you have to win a championship? How many do we think TCU had a year ago? They had a lot.
Yeah, they did. Definitely.
That their quarterback was an 8 or above. He was a Heisman finalist. Kendry Miller was an 8 or above. Quentin Johnston was an 8 or above. They had multiple defensive backs that were 8 and above. You're probably talking about 10-ish that TCU had a year ago that you would count in that tier. Texas has 7. They probably need like 3 or 4 guys to join the list of guys that we just talked about. And if they do, now we're talking about a team that probably wins a Big 12 championship. I think you start putting the pieces together of what the criteria is, and then it really becomes, if you had to pick 3 that isn't in that group of 7, who are your 3 or your 4 or your 5 for that matter? I think it's a really interesting conversation.
If you want to throw a chat at us, obviously we will check that out. It really would help you if you throw a super chat in, because we noticed those. Those really do blink at us a little bit. Thanks to those that have already sent a super chat. Thanks to those that are jumping in. There's some good ones coming in. Too Broke to Pay Attention says, in addition to being the best players, I always think of championship level players as those players who elevate themselves, the team, and other players around them to that next level. I think that's certainly a fair description. I also like this one, Ketch. Worthy, Mitchell, Sanders, Banks, Ford, Barron. You mentioned all of those. Then they say potentially Holmes, but I haven't seen him enough. Do you think Gavin Holmes needs to be in this discussion for possible championship level guy for this team.
No, but the player ahead of him on the depth chart, I would. Ryan Watts, right?
That's the guy you mentioned, yeah.
That's the other guy. He listed 6. I listed 7. To be fair, my only other guy that I would rank in that group right now is the player ahead of Holmes. But look, Holmes is a guy that certainly has the ability. He's a longtime starter in the ACC. If called upon, I think he could be that kind of player. Is Malik Muhammad already an 8? I'll be honest with you. I thought about this for about 10 minutes in the car ride over to Texas Card House today. He's close.
Wow.
He's really close.
That's impressive. It's impressive that you're already thinking of him that way. And we'll talk a little bit about him coming up around 12:40 or so. I'm probably the only person on earth that would dare sit through the Sark and Jimbo press conferences in one day, but they both had press conferences, and I'll give you thoughts on what I heard from both. So I did go back and listen to Sarkisian's comments on Muhammad and the fact that he did mention a freshman and the tackling there. I think there's a little clarification on the way he said it, but it was impressive that he was a part of those comments. So that's an interesting discussion too, Ketch, on a freshman class. So Malik Muhammad on the defensive side. Let's go to Jonte Cook, one of my favorite guys, easily my favorite of this new class. I really want to see him show up. What would you say? Where would you put Jonte Cook right now, based on what you're hearing? Practice, what's his number? Is he up into the 7s already?
Yes.
You're just trying to figure out if he's
somewhere between like a 7 and a 7.5.
Okay.
And I think, if he's a guy that at the end of this season, we're talking about being Big 12 Offensive Freshman of the Year. The thing is, if you drop the number down, if we say that the championship player question isn't an 8, but it's a 7.5, then I think there's like a dozen guys we can have conversations about.
Yeah. Let me throw this idea out. What about this one from Paxton? What about Whittington? We haven't said his name yet.
I don't think Whittington had 1 touchdown a year ago.
Okay.
No. The thing is, and look, I saw this question, and I think this was a really good comment, and I think this is at the root of what we're talking about. Thank you, Money G, for the question. How many of those TCU guys would you have said were championship level players before the beginning of last season? It's a completely fair question. And the answer is probably 1. It's probably Quentin Johnston. And all of those other guys made the leap of, again, I think Texas has 7 right now going into the season. The question is, how many do we think they'll have at the end of the season? That's where the Quinn Ewers piece of the puzzle comes in. I've seen some people mention Tavondre Sweat, Jalen Catalon, Byron Murphy. There's a lot of guys that I think Jonathan Brooks is probably like a 7. So how many guys make that leap up this season will determine the season for the Longhorns. I think they had 7 a year ago-ish, right? You probably take a couple of these guys out that were kind of given bumps up. To be completely fair, Xavier Worthy wasn't an 8 a year ago. This year, we're saying going into the season, we think he's a 9. So we are projecting to a certain extent, but I think there are a lot of players that we think have a chance to be these kind of players at the end of the year. Quinn Ewers, absolutely one of them that I can't give completely the full benefit of the doubt. I can't in good faith put other guys on the level of the players that we just mentioned when I don't think there are a lot of players that deserve to be discussed in the same breath at this point with Kelvin Banks, with Xavier Worthy, with Jatavion Sanders. I'm giving A.D. Mitchell a lot of benefit of the doubt. I'm taking everything that I've heard from people in the offseason about him, and I am pointing to the fact that in every NCAA playoff game he's ever played in, he scored a touchdown for the dynasty team right now in college football. I think if A.D. Mitchell were playing for Georgia, they would be calling him at least an 8 going into this season. They thought he was going to be their number 1 receiver. He's now number 1B next to Xavier Worthy's 1A. When people talk about that the Texas wide receiver room is among the best 2 or 3 in the country, It's because of those two guys, first and foremost, both of whom I think fit the description. Whittington could be an 8. He's just not today. Same with Jonte Cook. Same with Isaiah Nayor. Same with probably half the roster that's inside the 2 deep. Anthony Hill is probably in the 7s. He's a 5-star prospect. He's a guy that's jumping out, but he's not a starter yet. And the step up from 7.5 to 8 and above is probably the biggest step that has to be taken. If we were to go from 5 to 6, I think there's some subtlety between average to slightly above average. To go from very good to difference maker, I think is the big step. And that's what we're really wondering about with this roster going into this season.
All right, Ketch, we got a couple super chats here that we'll get to, and I think this is a card reference. Ketch is at Texas Card House, 183 and Anderson Mill area. Super chat, $5, Buck Wild Longhorn. Ketch, Texas is going to flop quads against Alabama. Flop. Okay, flop quads. That sounds like a good thing, right? The flop in Texas Hold'em is the first cards that go out.
Yeah, that means that you've either got a pocket. So he's saying I'm going to flop quads. So let's say I've got 2 kings. Then 2 kings come out on the flop. Or
right, okay.
I have a king, and the flop is king, king, king.
Okay, fair enough. So he thinks it's going to be a good night in Tuscaloosa for Texas is what he said.
God, let's hope so.
My goodness. All right, here's another super chat. $1.99, no Banks or O-line not involved. I'm not sure exactly what that means, Texas boy. Is he saying he doesn't think Banks is championship level?
I'm not sure, but Kelvin Banks is probably one of the first guys I'm picking.
Yeah.
If we're building this Texas team from scratch, the first player I'm taking is Kelvin Banks.
Yeah, I would totally agree. All right, so let's get a little reset here for you because we got a nice show set up. We hope today. Catch us at Texas Card House, as we mentioned. Go check them out, 183 Anderson Mill. We got a couple guests for you later on. We're going to get into – it's really an America show today. It's everything that Americans either love or love to hate. And we start with Nick Harris at 120. The Dallas Cowboys, Ketch and I are both fans. Nick Harris at DallasCowboys.com at 120. At 2 o'clock, it is the day to have the Taylor Swift conversation. 4 months ago, I saw Taylor Swift in Houston, so we thought it'd be a good day for Ketch. He said he wanted to have the conversation, ask me some questions or whatever. We got some pictures we're going to throw up from that night at NRG. That's at 2 o'clock. Because the world either loves or hates Taylor. And then at 2:20, it's Kyle Henderson. Longhorn fans, keep your friends close and your Bama information closer because September 9th is coming fast. He is the man who runs Bama football on YouTube, the Bama page you want to check out on YouTube. Kyle's already joined us once on the show, but he's going to join us today to talk about that big scrimmage from them last weekend. 3 quarterbacks playing with the ones. What did it mean? All that kind of stuff. We got buy or sell coming up at 1 as well. And in about 7 minutes or so, I'll tell you what I thought of Jimbo and Sark yesterday and their press conferences. So, but again, the big topic today, how many championship players are on this Texas team? Ketch, here's a name we have not thrown out yet. Give me your grade right now, your number for CJ Baxter.
He's a 7.
Okay. Kind of
he's a
simmering.
7 trying to climb the ranks.
Okay. And for the record, Ewers.
I've got him at a 7 as well. I actually, Baxter might be more of a 6 if I'm being, if we're being fair. I told Anwar yesterday I thought Ewers was a 6.75.
Ooh.
Because this comes back to what do we know? And if I know, how certain am I? Because you better know, right? We talk about this all the time. Mm-hmm. What do you think versus what do you know? I think he is probably going to be better than a 6.7. What do I know? I mean, I don't know that. So it's one of the things that we'll learn pretty early, I think, in the season is where Quinn Ewers is on that scale. Texas doesn't win a Big 12 championship this year unless he's an 8. And I'm not saying he's like a 6.75 at the end of the season. I'm saying that none of us can talk about him in that breath as being the best quarterback in the Big 12. Not yet. Not yet. He's got to finish. He's got to be. We got to see consistency. You can't be an 8 as a quarterback in college football and not know what you're going to get from week to week. So I think really the conversation with Quinn Ewers is, in the first month of the season, does he establish that he's an 8? Or is it still a little bit of a roller coaster ride? What happens the first weekend when Texas goes on the road in the Big 12 this year? Let's say when they go to Waco.
Yep.
Do you know for sure that you're getting an 8 out of Quinn Ewers? I don't think even Steve Sarkisian knows that yet. It's not an insult. It's a we don't know yet kind of conversation. All of the players that we mentioned as 8 or aboves, the 7 guys that I've mentioned, I'll go play anybody in the country right now with those guys.
Yeah,
there's nobody else yet on the roster that I'll quite say that about. But I think there are a lot of guys in the 7s knocking on the door. Who gets there is part of the reason why we watch the games. Who evolves this season? And you can point to every team in the country. I thought that Money B's question about the TCU guys from a year ago was a great question. Their quarterback last season started as their number 2 guy. He wasn't supposed to be their starter. And an injury in the first game of the season changed everything about everything. And so, it's not an indictment on anybody to say that a team doesn't have the numbers going into the season that are proven. What gets proven during the season is every conversation that we have during the offseason. Who makes that move to being an NFL level player, an all conference level player, a difference making level player? If Texas gets this thing up to 15, a dozen, you're talking about a team that's got a very good chance to play in the playoff. If they don't hit 10, look, 7's a healthy number. Again, we don't know that anybody else in the Big 12's got 7. Texas has 7 guys that you feel like really can play for. They could go to Georgia and start for Georgia or play for Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They need other guys, though. To beat Georgia, you got to have more than 7. To not get beat by 3 touchdowns against Georgia, you probably need more than 7. It is the $1 million question of this season for the Longhorns. How many guys step up and elevate this team beyond 8-4, 9-3, and into the double-digit wins in a season where things and accomplishment and banners tend to get produced? I can't wait to find out. We're only 11 days away.
Yep. Money B, we are coming towards your super chat, but before we get to there, Catch a couple from Trip here. Quinn is a 6. Based off what we have seen, he has the potential to end up as a 9 or a 10 by the end of the season. So he's got Quinn graded about what you do, a little bit lower.
I mean, he's looking at the results from a year ago and saying, I can't give a guy that hasn't done it yet in anything other than practice higher than what we've seen from him. He's not wrong. I don't know that he can be at 10 by the end of the season, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Quinn Ewers wins a Heisman. Quinn Ewers is a Heisman finalist. You can kind of put him in that rarefied air for sure.
We're going to work our way towards a Trip super chat here in a second, but first, Trip says the championship level players we have, in his opinion, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, and Jalen Ford. I know you'd agree with 2 of the 3. Whittington, it's tough to say that about right now. Boy, he's got the potential, though. We know that. We know there's a potential for it.
I don't know that Jordan Whittington is the 3rd best receiver on the team. And I love Jordan.
I know. It's
my
a stacked
favorite
room.
player.
All right, let's go super chat. $5 from Money B. Catch, what stats/eye test do you need to see for Ewers and Catalan to get in that number? Did Mr. Ketchum go away? Where'd he go? Did I do that? Did I just break something? Blake, did I just break things? Oh, no. Okay. Hold on. I'm good. Wait a minute. I got you. Okay. So we may have lost Jeff for a moment. He'll be right back. He's going to be back. There was not some weird card game going on at Texas Card House where, cards were thrown down. It wasn't like a tombstone situation, and I'll be your Huckleberry. But interesting question. This $5 super chat What do you need to see for Ewers and Catalan to get to that number? We'll definitely get Ketch's thoughts on that. The other super chat we'll get him to hit on is the $4.99 from Trip. What direction do you think Sark goes with the quarterback position if Quinn struggles this year? Oh, Trip. Really? Already with that? Is that where you want to go? Don't worry. We'll get Ketch's thoughts on both of those. Mr. Ketchum, are you good? Uh-oh. Not hearing you. Not hearing you now. Let's get that mic fired up. Let's get it going. They shut him down at Texas Card House. What happened? Where is he?
All right. Can you hear me?
Got you now. There you are. Okay. So got a couple of super chats for you to react to here. $5 from Money B. Catch, what stats / eye test do you need to see for Ewers and Catalan to get to the championship number, to get to your 8 or above? What do they need to do?
I think Ewers, from a statistical standpoint, you got to be like 160 or above as a quarterback. It's an eyeball test. Do those guys look like week in and week out, like they're among the best players on the field every week?
Yeah, and for Catalan,
I don't know that it's a number as much as when you see it, you know it.
Yeah, and for Catalan, obviously, not to be a smartass here, but the 3 most important words you just said are on the field. That's where he's got to be.
Simple with that guy. He's
got to play.
An all-SEC player in 2020. Well, and he hasn't been on the field the last 2 seasons.
That's the great thing to Catch. If I'm a Texas fan, think about Catalan and Whittington. I mean, is there any doubt that if they are healthy and play, that they're badasses? Now, what level of badass is one thing. Those are impactful players if they're good. We know that.
Are they? Like, is Jordan? I think Jordan Whittington has to prove that he's that guy.
Okay. I think he is that guy. And just like Catalan, I would say if he's not, it's the injuries that are keeping him from it.
Well, Jordan Whittington was healthy for an entire season last year, played 12, 13 games. He scored 1 touchdown. He has to be better.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. The other one I wanted you to react to, Catch, is this one. $4.99 from Trip. What direction do you think Sark goes with the quarterback position if Quinn struggles this year? Here we go.
I think they're viewed as even right now. I think Malik Murphy will be the backup quarterback. I think Arch Manning will be the 3rd string quarterback, but I think they're kind of even as a 2. And if the same injury happened to Quinn Ewers this year that happened last year, so he's out 4 weeks, I think Malik Murphy gets the call, but I don't think he's got a big old long leash. I think that they would give him a shot, and then I don't think they would hesitate, if needed, to go to Arch Manning and then Katie bar the door. Who the hell knows where we're at in a world where that happens?
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, and before we transition here, super chat, $5. Thank you, Money B. Chad, give us a little Sweet Lou Holtz while he's gone. Well, now you're back, but we could give you some. How about Lou Holtz singing Taylor Swift? Take the reason for the teardrops on my guitar. The only reason when you're wishing on a wishing star, there's a thought and a sing, 3rd down, 4th, and another game. There it is. All right. Okay. There you go. A little Sweet Lou for you. We're going to talk Taylor Swift at 2:00 because I went to see her in Houston. But Catch, I think this might be a good time. What just
happened?
I think it might be a good time to talk about the 2 coaches and their press conferences, because you just reminded me of something Sark said yesterday. This is a total little detail thing, but when he was asked about quarterbacks, he talked about that all of the quarterbacks are showing good command of the offense and things like that. But as he talked about the backups, he said Arch and Malik. He did not say Malik and Arch. Does it matter? Probably not. I'm just letting Texas fans know Arch was the first word that came out of his mouth. I thought that was somewhat interesting. In terms of some other things, to the Malik Muhammad comment, fair to bring up that he was asked about who are the better tacklers on the team. Sarkisian said that he thinks tackling is good on this team. He threw an umbrella over it to start with. Then he said, basically, even some of the young guys are showing us that they're doing well tackling. And he said that Muhammad had both scrimmages, 2 good scrimmages in a row in terms of tackling. And he admitted when we recruited Malik Muhammad, that's probably not why we recruited him. We thought he was going to be a badass corner. We didn't think he was going to be a great tackler. So I thought that was somewhat important to point out there. But he did bring him up. He talked about Catalan being good tackling. And he also mentioned LaFau right away. After Muhammad, LaFau was the next guy out of his mouth in terms of young tacklers. What do you got, Ketch?
I'm still thinking about what just happened, and I'm looking at the comments in the chat, and, you know, Chris Nelson is speechless. I am too.
Well, the Lou Holtz Taylor Swift went over well. Was that good?
I like that. Is it drunk Lou? Your Lou Holtz, has it become just a drunk Lou Holtz?
It really does. It's gone from kind of the sort of like a hotel ballroom, we're giving a speech that matters Lou Holtz, to the hotel bar. You want to know? Let me tell you what. I did kick Jimmy Johnson's ass. In actuality, it was a pool in Lake Tahoe, and I whooped his ass. That's what I'm saying. And then they throw him out. Yeah.
It reminds me so much of Three Coaches and a Baby. I want to fall. I want to find that audio so I can hear Lou Holtz say, applesauce.
That's right. Applesauce. Yep.
People have no idea what we're talking about. That's okay.
They have no clue. No clue. Let me see if there was anything else in the Sark comments that I wanted to throw out. He said there's a gap between the three wide receivers and everybody else. The first 3 wide receivers and everybody else. But he didn't say who those 3 were. So, Ketch, do you think he means Worthy, Whittington, and Mitchell? Or does he mean Worthy, Mitchell, and somebody else? When he says the top 3 wide receivers and then there's a gap.
It's Whittington, Worthy, and Mitchell.
That's what I thought he meant. Just wanted to see if you maybe had a different interpretation of that. But I thought that was an interesting comment. He did talk about in receivers. This was interesting to me because we all know, if you're a Texas fan, you may have the feeling that they like to take deep shots a little too much. And why do they always take them to Worthy? He mentioned that Mitchell, Nair, and Jonte Cook are all good deep ball guys. And then, Ketch, he brought up a play last year where, get this, Xavier Worthy made a big play on a short pass. I know. Didn't think it was possible either. But apparently, there was a play where they only threw like an 8 or 10 yard pass, and Xavier Worthy made it a 40-yard play. Huh. Interesting.
That's how guys become 8s or 9s.
It can happen, right? So I like that comment because at least it tells me he's thinking of other guys. We know he's going to take his shots. Steve Sarkisian is taking his shots. We know that. But it doesn't always have to be Worthy. Using him different ways is key. So watch for those 3 guys, Mitchell, Nair, and Cook, to try to take the top off. It doesn't have to just be Worthy. So I thought those were all kind of interesting stuff. He talked about Ethan Burke, the length, the blue collar, the good IQ, and all the stuff he's seeing. Gave Westlake some love and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, like you talked about yesterday, he talked about great effort from the defense and that the defense had played really well. So I thought his press conference was good overall. And one similarity I would give you, Ketch, between Sark and Jimbo, they both feel pretty loose to me. They both feel confident. And Sarkisian's a little more business confident. Jimbo's just loose right now. I don't even know what it means. He's still talking way too fast. He's still country Jimbo, but he's really loose. He's having fun with the media. He loves to talk about insider stuff. You'd love this part. Here's the phrase he used. He said, oh, man, they already know what happened. He said, they already know what happens. They've got their double secret spy probation people they had watching. He really gets into that. He really loves that whole thing right now. But he does it
because I'm in Austin.
Nice.
Had to stop and get a little Bush's chicken root beer.
Nice. I like Bush's chicken. I hadn't had it I had it literally in the last year or so, and I liked it.
I just went for the root beer. Like I drove into town and was like, that's a good fountain root beer they've got at Bush's Chicken on 620. Made that happen.
I haven't had the root beer. I got to try that. You know, I love a good root beer. Chicken's pretty good too. That little special sauce they have is nice. So yeah, we'll get back to some more of that. Jesse's got a super chat, $9.99, 50 catches, 652, 13 on the average. Pretty damn good for below average quarterback play, especially when Sark has said Quinn looked deep way too often and not at the other routes.
I'm not saying that Jordan Whittington's not a good player. He's just not an 8. He's not an all-conference level player. You can't be an 8. You can't be a championship player as a wide receiver and not score touchdowns. So let me reiterate. I hope Jordan Whittington becomes a 10. I borderline love the guy just as a human being. Not even borderline. I love the guy. There's a realness to Jordan Whittington that he's willing to talk about things that most athletes won't. And I love the guy for it. But we're not doing a show where we're talking about on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do we love guys? We're talking about on a scale of 1 to 10, how close do you become to being at that championship level as a player? And I think there's a step for him that he still needs to take. But boy, would I love for him to get there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then the other part I would add is I think there's also just a responsibility on these coaches on 2 guys for me, Whittington and Sanders. If you believe right now Sanders is, and I'm with you, that he's already at that 8 to 10 level, it's Sark's job to keep him there and accelerate him. And it's Sark's job to make Whittington a championship player at times. Because you bring up the fact that he only had 1 touchdown. I think that's a disgrace, but I don't think it's a disgrace necessarily to him. It's not like there's 4 drops in that discussion. I think there's a lot of not called plays in that discussion and a lot of not paying attention to Whittington in that discussion because he and Sanders were both healthy through the run last year, and they kept throwing it to a dude with a broken hand. That can't happen in 23.
Well, and look, that's an indictment on a few people.
Yeah.
Maybe not the players. It is, to a certain extent, it is an indictment on those players that they're choosing the guy with a broken hand who's not performing at a high level over the other guys. It's an indictment on Sark, though, too. Like, if you're calling the plays, if you're the play calling head coach, your job is to get the ball to your playmakers. And if and it's nobody else's responsibility. If the quarterback's not doing that, it's the head coach's job to put somebody in that will.
Yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. Yeah, I'm going to say it all year long, just like I used to say it with Greg Davis. People used to say, oh, Greg Davis gets too cute. Nope, he wasn't cute enough. And for Sark, same thing. His cute can kick people's ass if he'll just do it. Sometimes what happens with him, I think, is he tightens up. He caves in on himself. If he used every idea he had, that'd have been a different season last year. So I'll defend Sanders and Whittington by saying, do not make an argument to me that they went to those guys and they kept letting them down. I would argue they just didn't go to those guys. They didn't call the plays. Not enough.
The thing is, if Jordan Whittington had been an 8 last season, he would have gone pro.
Yeah.
He came back for another year. I mean, he's a grown man now. Don't get me wrong. Jordan Whittington loves Texas, but I think Jordan Whittington is ready to be paid as a professional football player, and he just didn't perform at that level last year. He averaged 13 yards a catch. He's getting the ball in the middle of the field. He's in a position to make guys miss, to break tackles. He's got to do more of that. He's got to be more of a big play guy. You can't just be the safety valve who isn't a big play threat. And it's one of the things that if Jordan Whittington doesn't do more this season, he's going to get taken off the field. Why? Because I think they know that Jonte Cook is a guy that can get the ball in the end zone. That Jonte Cook is a guy like Xavier Worthy that you can throw him a hitch and he can do nasty big play things with it. And when Isaiah Nayor is fully healthy and he's at his best, He did that at Wyoming. That was the anticipation a year ago was that he would do what A.D. Mitchell is supposed to do this year. So the good news for Texas is they have so many wide receivers that are that talented that you either are going to be forced to make plays through peer pressure or you'll get replaced by somebody that's going to make those plays. There aren't many teams in the country that are so deep at wide receiver that even the idea of taking a guy like Jordan Whittington off the field would even be discussed. It speaks to the depth that they have, that they live in a world where it's like, man, Jonte Cook's a second-team player. Isaiah Nayor, who's been an all-conference player in another league, can't quite crack the starting lineup right now. Although I saw someone earlier in the chat say that when Sark's talking about his big three at wide receiver, that he's talking about Mitchell, Worthy, and Nayor. He might.
Yeah, that's what I didn't know.
I think he's including Whittington.
Yeah, me too.
I think he's including him, but they're deep enough that he could have meant a lot of different combinations.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this chat up because they're mentioning my guy, Rodolfo. Ketch, why don't they just put Cook in the slot? There's an idea for you. Jonte Cook in the slot? Come on.
I would put Xavier Worthy in the slot, and I would leave Jonte Cook on the outside. You got to remember, Xavier Worthy came to Texas, and the thought was he was going to be in the slot. And after the first day of practice, they realized Jordan Whittington. Why can't I say Jordan's name today?
You're turning into Lou. Jordan Whittington.
I really am.
Jordan Whittington. Yeah.
They realized they wanted to get Worthy and Witt on the field at the same time together. So they moved Worthy to the outside. If it were me, I would be moving Worthy into the slot because he's just so dangerous. He's so dangerous. Moving him all over the field and making teams match up with him.
Yep.
On both hash marks, being worried about him over the scope of an entire field. Really, it's who I think he's going to be at the next level. So, look, I'm okay with Cook in the slot, but if we're trying to move a guy into the slot, the best guy for me that you could put in the slot is probably Xavier Worthy.
Yeah, and I think the answer is both and all of them. Do it, move them around. My favorite thing about the two best coaches probably in football right now, Saban and Belichick, in terms of the minds people respect. I just love all the ways they use receivers. Catch. They will allow crazy ideas to happen. One of them won a Super Bowl by splitting his running back wide left in a Super Bowl on the biggest drive of the game, and it worked. And Alabama, when they went through that section where Sark was calling plays for them and they were tearing everybody up, they put receivers all over the field. All kinds of guys. Take a guy in a slot, put him outside, go 3 wides, 4 wides. That's what Sark's got to be to me, just ideas. You can swarm people with your ideas when you have talent like he does, but you got to use it.
Let's do this. Let's take a break. When we come back, it's buy or sell. Mm-hmm. At 1:20, we're going to talk some Cowboys with Nick Harris, who the last time I had him on one of our shows, not with you, but previous to this, he was Rivals.com recruiting analyst, Nick Harris.
Oh, okay.
He left, and of all the jobs that he could take,
he's working for he went from one tent to the other. He went from one tent
to the other, which means that we still love him and still want to use him. Had he taken a job with SeattleSeahawks.com, still might have been great for his career, but I don't know how much we'd want to talk to him. As it is, our level of interest in what he's seeing and talking about. And I'm going to ask him, we're obviously going to ask him about DeMarvion Overshown and kind of in-house what the feeling is that means for him. Is it as easy as he gets healthy and next year he's competing for a starting job? Just what does that knee injury do? All of that in the 1:00 hour. When we come back, though, buy or sell. And Blake, I'm probably just going to have to wing it on the other side of this break. We'll be right back. This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look at maybe the best thing Charlie Strong ever produced for the Texas football program. What is that, you ask? Identifying Sam Ehlinger as the quarterback of choice for the 2017 recruiting class and then landing his commitment. For those who might not remember, Ehlinger finished as the nation's number 115th overall prospect in the 2017 Rivals recruiting rankings, the 17th best player in the state of Texas, and the number 5 dual threat quarterback in the country. While Rivals eventually came around on Ehlinger, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for ranking Ehlinger as a top 10 prospect in the state and the number 1 quarterback in Texas before he ever received a scholarship offer. SMU was technically the first school to offer Ehlinger, but it's important to note that right after the Mustangs came after him with an offer, Houston head coach Tom Herman followed. Not long after Herman offered, Ehlinger received his first Power 5 offer from Charlie Strong and the Texas Longhorns, an offer Texas fans had been anticipating since a terrific display by Ehlinger at the Texas Elite Quarterback Academy in mid-June. According to Ehlinger, Texas OC Sean Watson told him that they weren't going to offer any other quarterbacks in the 2017 recruiting class. Quote, "They're not going to offer anybody else," end quote, Ehlinger said. 9 days later, the lifelong Texas Longhorn fan, you might have heard about that over the years that followed, committed to the Longhorns. Quote, "Been a Longhorn since day one. I'm truly blessed to say that I'm committed to the University of Texas," Ehlinger announced on Twitter. There wasn't a lot to Ehlinger's recruitment for the better part of the next 16 months as he finished his junior season, competed at the Elite 11 finals going into his senior year, and then went on to begin his senior season in 2016 at Westlake without any distractions. Yet a thumb injury ended his senior season prematurely at Westlake, and it coincided with a horrible 5-7 year for the Longhorns that ended with Strong's dismissal. Suddenly, there was some doubt about his future for a day or two. Almost as soon as Tom Herman was announced as the Texas head coach, he met with Ehlinger to ensure that the player he first offered nearly a year and a half earlier, and before Texas ever offered, knew that he was at the center of all of his plans while on the 40 acres. Following that meeting, Ehlinger locked back into his commitment, and the rest is Longhorns history. Ehlinger was the best part of a 2017 recruiting class that Ehlinger often joked was nicknamed the shit-stain class because of the small reputation it had upon its arrival. It ended up being a class that produced 4 NFL players: Ehlinger, Sam Cosmi, Taquan Graham, and Josh Thompson.
Woo, house divided on a Tuesday. We got some guests coming up. Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com at 1:20. And we're going to dig back into Bama at 2:20 with Kyle Henderson of the Bama Facebook on YouTube page. You got to check that out if you haven't. And at 2 o'clock in the crap bag, Ketch is going to ask me about my journey to see Taylor Swift back in April. I got the Taylor Swift shirt on today. We're ready to roll. Ready for the T-Swizzle conversation with pictures coming up at 2 o'clock.
I've got good news, by the way.
Yes, I love good news.
I got the call earlier today from the people who took all of my 20-something-year-old video of high school football prospects for our, we just ran the Sam Ehlinger video during the break.
Right.
It's all ready to go.
Really?
I'm either going to have my wife pick it up later today, or I'm going to go pick it up tomorrow. But
so you have
quickly,
okay.
I've got DJ Williams. We're going to be able to do a DJ Williams recruiting flashback where I talk about the infamous visit that he took.
Okay.
Chris Sims, Roy Williams, BJ Johnson, Bo Scaife, all the guys, and like Cedric Benson, Derek Johnson. Like,
okay,
I can't wait to produce those recruiting videos because it will include highlights that people haven't seen in 2+ decades. You can't find this stuff on the internet anywhere. Right. And we're about to bring it back, baby.
Look at that. Look at that.
It means our commercials will be better than the show.
Digging up the good stuff. That's what, well, we don't quite hope that, but we hope it's close. We hope it's competitive. That's what we're hoping for. All right. So you ready for a little buy or sell on this Tuesday?
Yeah, I'm going to make up my questions on the fly. So I'm going to let you go first today.
Fair enough. All right. Here we go, Mr. Ketchum. Buy or sell? If you had to pick the World Series today, you'd go Atlanta and Baltimore.
Sell. I'd probably go Atlanta and the Astros. I still have a lot of respect when they get in. My Phillies went up against that machine in the World Series a year ago. Until someone beats them, they are my presumptive favorite in the American League. I'd like to put my Phillies in there because I think they're built for a playoff series, but I think the Braves are better than them right now. Although the Phillies have been playing great baseball really since March or since April, so we'll see. But yeah, I'd probably go. The Astros are my favorite. Period. Until someone beats them in a 7-game series.
Fair enough. Baseball run to the playoffs should be a lot of fun. Buy or sell number 2, Catch. All 3 Texas quarterbacks play against Rice.
Buy. I think the way that thing goes is if the game goes according to plan, I think Ewers plays almost through 3 quarters. I think with about 3 to 5 minutes left to go in the third quarter, Malik Murphy comes in. He executes the offense for most of what we see in the final stages of that game. And then probably with about 5 minutes to go, we'll see Arch come in, and it'll probably be a lot of handoffs. But I think there will be a third down situation where Arch will get to throw a pass. Not only do I think all 3 quarterbacks play in the game against Rice, I think all 3 attempt passes.
Interesting. All right. Let's go number 3 to the birthday list. Today, Catch, is Jizza's birthday. You dig him, but your favorite rapper in the Wu-Tang Clan is Method Man.
That's probably a buy.
Okay.
Probably. It kind of depends on the mood that I'm in.
That's fair.
Think about Wu-Tang on any given day. I could go with a lot of guys in that group.
Yeah, no kidding there. Shout out to my guy Zay Collier for getting me into Wu-Tang. I love the Jizza Liquid Swords album. I think it's fantastic. He's probably my favorite, just rap for rap, moment for moment, because it's so well thought out. He's probably my favorite of the group, but they're all great. Everything I've heard was really, really good so far. All right, Catch, buy or sell. Today, you can guarantee me that the Cowboys sweep Washington this season.
So, what are we guaranteeing? Cowboy wins? No.
I thought I'd throw a big G word in there,
No, I love the confidence of asking that question. Every time Dallas goes to Washington, that is always such a weird game.
Hey, did you watch any Sam Howell last night?
Did I watch any preseason football? They played the Ravens last night?
They did.
I know that game occurred. I know that like in the fourth quarter, both teams were in the 20s. I didn't watch any of the game. I have no idea. The Ravens won, right?
No, the Ravens streak ended at 20. They'd won 24 preseason in a row. Washington got them at the end. Sam Howell looked pretty good.
Wait a minute. Baltimore had won 24 preseason games in a row?
Yes, the second place active was 6. First place is now 6 with the Raiders. Old school Packers did like 19 in a row back in the 50s. Yes, they had won 24 in a row in the preseason.
When was the last time Baltimore won a Super Bowl?
Super Bowl
when they beat Harbaugh, right?
Yeah, the Harbaugh Bowl, like in the 15, 16, 17. It was 2015 was the last time they'd lost a game.
So I was about to say, it tells you how worthless preseason games are, but that might just stretch into when they won the Super Bowl, right? Maybe.
I want to say that would be we'll see we could sit here and do the math, but that wouldn't be a great show.
I can't remember when they went from 3 to 4.
It was Super Bowl
4 to 3.
I know the number of the Super Bowl was Super Bowl 47, but I don't know if that ultimately helps us. I believe it was Super Bowl 47.
We'll look it up. I was just going to make a point that I don't know that preseason games matter more when a team can win 24 straight. But there's no banners to hang up during that time.
No, it's a weird thing. But but former Longhorn Sam Cosmi did have a nice comment about it where it's like, yeah, I don't care about that. I don't give a shit about that stat and whatever. And Cosmi was doing the gritty after a touchdown last night. That was pretty cool. Wasn't a great gritty.
Doesn't care about that, but he does care about preseason touchdowns.
There you go. Hey, he's a Washington player. They got to take baby steps. All right. And finally, Catch, buy or sell. Today's prediction. Texas wins 9 in the regular season. Aggies win 8. Both lose on September 9th.
Sell.
Okay.
I think the Aggies are going to beat the Hurricanes.
There we go.
But I do think the Aggies finish with 8.
Okay. I knew that's where you'd been on them. I'm just making sure you're still there with Jimbo's crew.
All right, you ready for my buy or sell questions?
I'm ready. Here they come, straight from his noggin. Come on.
I'm making these up as I go. Buy or sell number 1. Bryce Harper had an inside the park home run last night.
Okay.
And like, crowd's going crazy. The announcers are going crazy. And it led me to wonder, buy or sell an inside the park home run more exciting than anything that can happen in a football game? Any single play?
No, it's a sell. I mean, you set the right moment up. A sack in a big moment can be bigger to me than an inside the park home run. It's a lot of fun.
Really?
Yeah. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? A packed DKR, if that game had come, let me just put it this way. If Ryan Watts puts Young on the ground, is that more exciting than an inside the park home run? I would argue.
Yeah, but you're raising what if Bryce Harper has an inside the park home run at home in a World Series game?
Okay. Well, you didn't qualify.
So, you're giving me a situation where the stakes are really high.
Right. You told me he did it last night. I'm just telling you, it's an exciting play. There's no doubt about it. It's an exciting play because you don't quite see it coming, but I'll put it on par with like a pick six in football to me most of the time. I'd put that as more exciting because it's badass.
Yeah, but the thing about a pick six is more times than not, there's not a lot of zigzags.
Right.
Is a kickoff return. That might be, or that a punt return. One.
Yeah.
Maybe those to me are the most exciting plays.
That might be
I'm trying to think about something where the crowd stands up on its feet and doesn't know the result of the play right away.
It is a very cool. You're right. In that way, it's a very cool moment because like a triple's that way to me in baseball too. You don't think you're going to see a triple when you walk into the ballpark, and you certainly don't think you're going to see inside the park. So that's what it is. That's what you got to find in football. Like a crazy moment that you didn't expect. I would say like 100-yard kickoff return. You don't walk in thinking you're going to see that. So it's that kind of a play.
All right. Buy or sell number 2. Nick Harris from DallasCowboys.com is going to join us in about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
If your dream job would be covering the Dallas Cowboys in some fashion.
My dream job would be covering the Cowboys in some fashion. I mean, I guess I could buy because there's a lot of ways to cover the Cowboys. I wouldn't want to be like a beat reporter that has to go into the locker room and do all that.
What if you're doing like post-game shows? Like
maybe
you were on game shows for like a decade.
Sure. It's one of my teams, so I'll throw a buy at that. Absolutely.
Is there any team you would pick ahead of the Cowboys? Like Liverpool FC? No, I'm just kidding.
I would just put all of my teams kind of on the same level. So Cowboys, Cowboys, Bucks, Aggies in college, the baseball teams. I'll just kind of put them all on that same level. But yeah, the Cowboys, I can't think of anybody certainly I would put ahead of the Cowboys.
Buy or sell number 3. It's a hot day.
Yes.
It's 104 degrees outside.
Mm-hmm.
And you go to the refrigerator and there's an ice cold pitcher of Kool-Aid and an ice cold Gatorade. And if you're choosing between the two, you're taking Gatorade all day long over the Kool-Aid.
By the way you set that up, I'm going to say buy. Because if I'm thinking of the hot day, I will go with the scientific electrolytes first. I love me some Kool-Aid, but if it's about the hot day, I'm going Gatorade. Now, if I'm staying in all day, we're going Kool-Aid, and we're probably adding vodka.
I did not see that coming at all. I did not realize that we were getting tipsy in the middle of our Kool-Aid. I haven't had Kool-Aid. It's been decades.
Man, one of the best things when you say Kool-Aid, the first thing I think of, there's a place out here in Elgin. Unfortunately, it closed down. Shout out and RIP to Eva Mays, a great soul food place that used to be in Elgin that the pandemic ultimately kind of got after. But Ketch, they used to do a Kool-Aid margarita. Oh my God. And they had some of the best Kool-Aid I've ever had in my life. So that is what I think of when you say Kool-Aid. It's good stuff. Adults should drink Kool-Aid every once in a while.
Buy or sell number 4. The last time the Texas Longhorns had a legit 8 at quarterback was Colt McCoy.
Buy. That's who was in my head when you started it. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Sam just never quite got there, did he?
Yeah, no, not quite to that level where you're saying, okay, that's championship stuff. I mean, if they beat Oklahoma that day at Jerry World, would the argument change? I guess maybe, but yeah, I'd go with Colt.
The issue is, would we call Sam like a 7.5?
Yeah.
So if Sam's a 7.5, what really is Quinn? Because he ain't Sam yet.
I almost agree with the chat earlier where it's in that 6. I mean, 6.5. Do we want to give him a 7? Maybe, but I think it's in the 6 category right now. Better than, he's not average. He's better than average. He can be pretty good at times. That day against Oklahoma, you'd have thought, my God, he's going to be a 9 tomorrow, but it just hadn't worked out. So I think it's all averaged out to around that 6, like kind of in that passing category.
I think Two Broke kind of nails it here. He is like a 7.95.
7.95. I like that. I'll do that.
But not an 8.
I'll go there.
And we could argue that inability to quite be an 8 was one of the things that Sam on his day could be a 9, 9.5.
Oh, yeah. There were days where you'd see that go up. Again, his ups and downs, Colt just evened that all out. Think about every up or down Sam had. Man, whatever Colt's floor was, it was definitely higher than what Sam had going on.
All right. And finally, buy or sell number 5. You're guaranteeing it right now. You haven't even seen the damn starters play, but the Cowboys are winning double-digit games this year in 17, at least 10-7.
I'm going to buy. I've had 10-7 in my head for a while. I'm buying that. Again, I feel like I know very little. Hoping Nick Harris can fill in some blanks coming up. I do not fully trust that running back situation. We'll talk to him about that. But yes, I'm going to go with 10-7. I'm going to believe in the talent that's there. I'm going to believe in Dan Quinn and the defense. And I'm just going to believe that this mess we're seeing is what you said earlier, what you said yesterday, that if the second and third string Cowboys played, we'd be in trouble. But the first string Cowboys are going to play. So I'm going to believe they win 10.
All right. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys and speaking of a man who was just in buy or sell a second ago, Nick doesn't know this, but he was in a buy or sell question because
darn right.
I think you could make a case that Chad and I would say covering the Cowboys in some capacity would be a bit of a dream job. Joining us right now on House Divided to talk a little bit about Dallas Cowboys and training camp. And Nick, is it fair to say you're doing a little bit of the dream job right now and working for DallasCowboys.com?
Hey, man, I'm blessed. I'm living the dream. I think I would have to say so. I appreciate you guys having me back on. It's good to tap back in. I actually have a Rivals undershirt on right now. I wore it just for this today.
Nice.
You can take the boy out of Rivals, but you can't take the Rivals out of the boy.
Hey, and I got to say, Ketch, not that it's a competition with the backgrounds of our guests, but not one, but 2 images of a victorious Barry Switzer as the Cowboys coach in the background. That's well played right there. That is aggressive, Nick.
Nick's background game right now, strong, very strong.
Hey, I just got a random meeting room. It's not me.
Oh, he's bragging. He's like, everywhere I go, there's just badass backgrounds.
Just flip of a coin. It just happened. That's awesome.
Right. Nick, we're going to start with the question I literally asked Chad right before you joined us, which is, would you guarantee 10-7 as a floor right now for these Cowboys, or is the NFL and you can never quite claim that 10-7-ish is the floor?
Yeah, it's tough to say 10 wins is a floor anymore, right? Just because of the competitiveness of the league. We saw those 16-0 Patriots not too long ago, it feels like, but it feels like a long time before we'll ever see something like that again, just because the competitiveness in the league is so strong right now. So I would say a floor is maybe 8 or 9 wins, whereas a ceiling would probably be 12, 13. So I think it's going to be fascinating regardless. There's still a lot of moving pieces, a lot of new things that are being integrated this year, but also a lot of the same things. So I'm excited to see how it all meshes together.
So, Nick, right now it appears like Mike McCarthy wants to play his starters about like my grandmother used to want to use the good china at Thanksgiving. Like it always stayed off to the side. We never got to see it. So, what do you know? Tell me something you know right now, because I'm a fan watching. I'm trying to figure stuff out, and I don't know what I know after watching. I watched every second of those two games. I'm not sure what I know. Do you know anything right now?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of takeaways you can take from these first two preseason games. And unfortunately, I would have said three before DeMarvion Overshown tore his ACL on Saturday, which that's just a whole ordeal that very unfortunate for him because he had done all the right things since he had been here. But things as far as I could take away, man, this is going to be a quick moving offense. I think with what Mike McCarthy is trying to integrate as the play caller and basically the offensive coordinator in effect is short, quick things. You know, they're opening up that West Coast offense. They want to put guys in positions to succeed pre-snap, and that involves getting the ball to them 2-3 seconds into the snap. So I think you're going to see a lot more pace from the Cowboys this year, and we've kind of seen that through the first couple of preseason. You know, putting guys like Jalen Brooks, Jalen Tolbert in positions to succeed. And we've even seen them push the ball downfield a little bit with Tolbert, which has been great to see. So I think that's what you could take away offensively. And then defensively, man, that defensive line, it doesn't matter what four are lining up. It's going to be a fun time.
It's weird that the defense has become the must-see TV of the Cowboys organization. It feels like as long as I can remember, it's just been about the weapons on offense, and whether it was Romo and Des Bryant and Jason Witten and the running backs and the evolution all through the years. And yeah, now here we are. Chad, if I had to take a bathroom break during a Cowboys game, I'm probably doing it when the offense is on the field.
That's sad to say, right? That's
not sad. Their defense is that much fun.
Yeah, they are.
It's crazy to say.
Nick, DeMarvion Overshown, obviously it feels like the most disappointing component of the preseason game from Saturday was losing him to an ACL injury. It's funny because he was having such a good camp, and the feeling was going to have a little bit of a role this season. Kind of still, it felt like even in week 2 of the preseason that what exactly that was remained to be seen. But that there was already discussion. We had talked with I can't remember who we talked with 2 weeks ago, but was it Clarence Hill who was talking about that? In year 2, he might have been a guy that was in a position to be a starter. Yeah. This injury, what does this do for DeMarvion? Forget about this year as he's rehabbing and coming back next year. Is the assumption that he would be able to come back and kind of be in that role, or does this injury make projecting the future really problematic?
I would probably lean towards the latter in saying that it's probably a little problematic to predict anything. But I will say there's still a ton of confidence in DeMarvion Overshown. And Mike McCarthy said on a phone conference yesterday that he's been the star of this rookie class. And to come in as a third-round pick and do that, I think that speaks volumes. He said from the very first meeting, he was standing up, asking questions, getting guys involved. And that translated onto the field during training camp. He had pretty much cemented a starting role on special teams in all 4 phases. And then he was going to rotate in on defense as well as probably the first guy on the field to take reps in for Damone Clark. So the fact that he's going to have to miss his entire rookie season, it's such a huge blow, not only to the team, but for him, just because he would have had so much confidence coming in year 1 and being able to perform. But, I think if anyone's built for this type of adversity, it's DeMarvion. Just knowing his mindset and knowing how he's going to attack this rehab process, I'm confident that he'll come in year 2 and pick up right where he left off. And I think the coaching staff is saying that as well.
Real quick, sticking with former Texas linebackers, Malik Jefferson, when he got hurt a couple of weeks ago, I wondered, honestly, whether or not he would ever play in another NFL game again. He's at this point in his career where he's not sticking as a player, but he can only be on the practice squad so many times before you're not really a guy on the practice squad anymore. Is that – but now I'm reading that, like, he may be back, that he's at least in a position where it sounds like he could. Kind of give us the Malik Jefferson breakdown and whether or not practice squad's a realistic spot for him this year, or is there anything more than that? Like it doesn't sound like it when I read the updates on DallasCowboys.com that he's making the roster, but is he in a place where he could still be on the practice squad and maybe have a role if there are injuries or something like that later in the year?
Yeah, there are a couple of things working into his favor. One, he came into training camp and looked great, completely healthy, was doing a lot of things, not only on defense, but on special teams as well. And now with this injury to DeMarvion Overshown, there's a spot opened up on special teams for a guy like him to go ahead and take advantage of. And he's been earning praise from Dan Quinn since the beginning of training camp, just talking about how he's come in and taken another step, which lets me feel encouraged a bit about him possibly making the team. But another thing is this linebacker depth is incredibly thin, and that was before the injury to DeMarvion Overshown. So I'm very curious to see what they do next week. Whenever it comes to waiver wire additions, I think linebacker will be at the top of their list. And do they get a guy that's more talented than Malik Jefferson? I think that's going to have to be a question they'll answer. I think there's still an opportunity for him to make this 53 cut just because of how thin it is at linebacker and the extra step that he has taken. But also this injury he's dealing with right now, too, that's also a concern you have to think about. Mike McCarthy said yesterday that he'll be hard-pressed to make it for this preseason finale on Saturday. So that at least makes me feel good about, it not being such a long-term injury, even if there is a small chance that he can play on Saturday. So, we'll see with Malik. I'm rooting for the guy, one of the best guys in the building as far as a human goes. And, he's definitely taking that next step on the field as well.
Talking with Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com, at Nick Harris DC on Twitter if you want to give him a follow. Cowboys Raiders, 7 o'clock on Saturday, and it's on the CW because it's the last preseason game. Couldn't make that up if I tried. Nick, let's go back to the offensive side and something that has me highly concerned, and I know a lot of Cowboy fans have to be with me. It's that running back room after Pollard. Talk to me about RB2 with what you've seen, Dowdle and Davis and a little bit of Deuce Vaughn. Do you like any combination there? Do you feel strongly about somebody joining Tony Pollard in that backfield and really being able to scare an NFL defense?
Yeah, I would say other than looking at depth on the offensive line, the running back 2 situation has probably been the most fluid through training camp and preseason. It felt like every week during the training camp in Oxnard that there was a different guy that was popping out and making his name known. But as we trend towards the end of preseason, I think Rico Dowdle is very close to cementing that RB2 spot. He's a tough runner. He finds the holes and he initiates contact. I think that's the difference between him and Malik Davis. And they both have burst to them. And whenever you have a guy who has burst and can initiate contact in between the gaps, that's probably a guy you would want as RB2. Now, as far as Deuce Vaughn, there's going to be a role for him in this offense, 1,000%. It's just going to be figuring out how to get him on the field and getting those touches for him. But I think it's going to be kind of a running back 2 by committee with him and Rico Dowdle. But as far as Malik Davis, Ronald Jones, Hunter Lipke, those are the other guys in the room. I wouldn't be surprised to see 2 or even 3 of those guys make it onto the practice squad.
Nick, one of the conversations that Chad and I have been having throughout this month when talking about the Cowboys is the Dak conversation. He's a really good quarterback. I think my concern as a fan is that now he's on the other side of 30, that maybe whatever his peak is or was going to be, that maybe we've seen it, and that maybe he's still going to be a really good quarterback for the next half decade or so. But what does that mean if the best of Dak has already been seen and now we're just getting a slightly, very slightly watered down version of peak Dak? Is there any chance I'm wrong? Have you seen enough in practice? Is there enough vibe in the building that there's more from Dak than we've ever seen before? Or do we need to do Chad and I as fans need to start preparing ourselves for the fact that whatever Dak we get, it won't quite be what we've seen from the best of Dak in his career, which has been really, really high. He's been a really good pro player. I just wonder what an eventual decline looks like from Dak.
Yeah, I want to start with reminding people about what his game looked like 2019, 2020, and 2021, and then how different that was from last year. And then also look into the things that are playing into his favor as opposed from last year, and you can kind of take your own opinion from there. The differences between last year and this year so far, is a new offensive system, and it's completely constructed around Dak Prescott. Mike McCarthy said it from the jump that this offense is going to be in Dak's language. The offense is built for Dak to succeed. It's built for Dak to get the ball to his receivers and everybody to be on the same page. And I think with that in mind, if this team succeeds, it's going to rely on Dak Prescott succeeding. So, us talking about floors and ceilings earlier, I think that's incredibly imperative on how Dak Prescott plays and how this offense succeeds. I think another major difference is Brandon on this receiving core now. Last year there were times when it was just, I think any three of us could have been wide receiver 2 at some point, with Michael Gallup battling injury most of the year. Noah Brown was up and down as well. It was CeeDee Lamb having to do a lot of the work and getting bracketed at times too, and then having to force to Dalton Schultz or force to some other receivers that just weren't ready for that moment. And now you have Brandon Cooks in the room. You have a healthy Michael Gallup. You have a Jalen Tolbert who's made an extra step. I think his weapons are also going to be able to help him out quite a bit. And I also want to throw in Deuce Vaughn into that conversation too, because if this offense is predicated on getting things out quick and getting things out to short routes, Deuce Vaughn's going to be a big part of that. So I think he had something like 40 to 45 catches last year at Kansas State. So shoot, if he can even get 15 to 20, I think that helps Dak Prescott in the long run as well. But talking about Dak and if we've seen the peak from him, maybe so. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, he is pushing 30. But I also think this offense will be built to help him succeed. I don't think it's going to be built for him to have an MVP conversation type of year, but I think it can put him in a conversation to get to the NFC Championship and get to that ultimate pinnacle as well.
Talking with Nick Harris.
NFC Championship. Chad, just gave me a heart attack. Like,
easy now.
No, I've never seen the Cowboys in an NFC Championship in my entire lifetime. Isn't that like that's crazy to say? It feels
it's
like
a beautiful thing. I've seen Chad and I have seen it.
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's like that one time. It's like that just a handful of times I've stayed in a 5-star hotel. I can still remember it, but it's been a long, long time.
True story, Chad. Real quick. Yeah. The first time the Cowboys won the NFC Championship, that I watched with my own eyes, that little game in San Francisco, when it was over with, I was leaping over a bonfire in celebration. Nice. Since you're an Aggie, I thought you would appreciate the fact that I was jumping over fire. And
that's fantastic.
And didn't come away harmed.
Celebrating with fire where you live through it is always a good thing. That's always good. So, Nick, let's stay right there with Dak and this offense, because for some reason, Mike McCarthy, felt he needed to make the weird comment about run the damn ball and take the shot at Kellen Moore. Clearly, that's not what this offense is, because that's not what we're watching. You've said it, West Coast. Everybody's talking about it. It looks quick. It looks fast. Based on what you've seen from Dak, we've seen the numbers are better with play action, but he's also a guy to me that when they move that pocket, he can be good. Do you think Dak's going to be good in the quick mindset if it stays in the pocket? Is that what we're going to see here? Is the idea is it's going to be Dak in the pocket operating this offense? Or do you think we're going to see that pocket move like we have?
Yeah, I think an important catalyst to that entire conversation is the running game. And Tony Pollard being the lead back and having a couple of guys that'll be able to rotate in and get some quick yards as well. The running game is going to be so important for this offense to succeed because you have to have that second level pushed back a little bit so that you can keep Dak in the pocket, quick throws out. I think that's going to be an important wrinkle to this. So if Tony Pollard goes down at any point in the year and Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn are being relied upon to step up and, facilitate that running game. Exactly, Chad. That's probably how I would feel as well. It would be, I would have a little bit of just, I guess, fan optimism, but I think that would be tough to completely rely upon him for. Which makes it interesting too, because Leonard Fournette's still a free agent, and you wonder if an injury were to happen, does he come into the building? But talking about Dak having to operate inside the pocket, this offense is going to help him do that, but the running game is going to be very important to that.
Nick, from a personnel standpoint, we talked about linebacker, we're talking about running back. If you could go back and be Cowboys GM for the offseason and salary cap aside, if there was a player or a position that you would have added after watching this team all throughout training camp and feeling like this would really help, what would it have been? What would it be?
You're saying what position?
Yeah, I'm just curious if you could beef up one thing, if you could go back and rewind the clock and do it through free agency or the draft, what would you do?
I would definitely get an offensive lineman a little bit earlier than they did. I really like what Austin Richards has done, the 5th-round pick out of North Carolina, Mac Brown guy. I like what he's done coming in. He played left tackle, 2,500 snaps of left tackle at North Carolina, and they brought him in and worked him primarily at left guard during training camp. And then the final practice before his first preseason game, the quote-unquote starting left tackle for the preseason games goes down with an injury, Chuma Edoga, and they throw Awesome Richards out to left tackle, and he succeeded. You know, he had some learning curves that he's going to have to overcome for sure, but I think there's some nice versatility there. But I wish they had gone earlier in the draft to get a guy that if an injury does happen this year on that front five, which, you know, it's tough to predict that all those guys will be ready for all 17 games in an NFL season. Whenever one of those guys goes down, you want to have a reliable option. And I think they could have found that in the second or third round. But they decided to go elsewhere. So I think the Luke Schoonmaker pick is going to have a very bright spotlight on it if we get into the season and an offensive line situation is starting to arise because someone goes down.
Nick, to bring two big worlds together around in these parts, we're obviously focused on Longhorn stuff, Cowboys stuff. I joked about a year or so ago, I wanted Sark to get with Jerry and McCarthy and teach him how to do a press conference and be boring. I feel like he did that. And I'm so glad to ask you this question. What have you taken from the boring Jerry? I enjoy it. There hasn't really been a lot of weird stuff said. That first press conference almost made me cry because it was so boring.
Glory hole.
There was no weird Jerry, strange Jerry. I feel like, I don't know, somebody's got him dialed up just right for me. Give me your take on 2023 Jerry, because I'm kind of digging it.
Yeah, he's I think we had a press conference, I believe it was on the first day of the draft, right after they had selected Mozzie Smith. And he had it was around the same time that somebody in the Hunt family had passed. I think it was Norma Hunt, the wife of the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs. And he was just kind of reminiscing on his time with the Hunt family when they were in Dallas, you know, how they've helped construct football, the game of football as we know it in the NFL. And I was sitting there, and he was sitting there talking about it for about 5 to 7 minutes in the NFL draft press conference. And it was fascinating to kind of see reminiscent Jerry. And I feel like we've continued to see that with each press conference that passes. Just a lot of reminiscing going on as far as his career with Cowboys. But yeah, nothing too crazy yet. I'm waiting for that first little moment where we all look at each other like, did I hear that right?
Yeah. I don't want it. The fact that it's August 22nd and we haven't heard it yet is remarkable.
Yeah. I mean, I will say there was a moment whenever he was talking about in the Zach Martin holdout, when he was talking about we need that money to pay Micah. That was a moment where we all kind of looked around like, did he really just say that? Well,
that's a little one. You're right. That's a little one. That is a little one.
That's a quote. That's a quote for sure.
That is. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Nick, I know you got to go do a press conference at 2, so we got you on limited time. Last question. You're 75 years old, right? It's deep into the future. You got grandkids bouncing around on your knees, and they're like, Grandpa, tell us a story about your first year covering the Cowboys. What's your story so far? If in 50 years from now, a grandkid says, tell us your favorite Cowboys story from your first year covering the team, what's your story at this point?
2 things came to mind that I cannot share, so I'm having to pivot a little bit. Let me think here. I'll say this. We were at training camp, and whenever we stay at training camp, we stay on the same complex as the players. Now, granted, they're kind of sectioned off on their own place. We're kind of sectioned off on our own place as far as the staff. And but we all kind of eat in the same area typically, and their meal room is right next to ours, and we see them, going back and forth between those things. And I came in to grab some Uncrustables at about 1 a.m. At one point during camp, and I walk in, and there is Brandon Cooks barefoot, and Stephon Gilmore with his shirt off, and they're also getting Uncrustables. I'll kind of have a moment there. We're looking at each other like, who's going to grab these? And there was only 4 left. And so we had to kind of divide them between each other. But that was kind of a funny moment that I guess I had from training camp. It was one of the cooler ones. And I also had a funny interaction with Derek Holland at a training camp that was quite fascinating as well. So that's probably a story that I would tell them about my first year so far.
And just for the off the record, do either of the 2 stories you can't tell involve quotable Jerry? I'm just wanting to know. Is there
neither of them
confirm or deny?
Oh, it's so Chad, you asked the right question, and I was so disappointed in the answer.
Yeah, I'm just making sure. I just want to make sure, just in case. Oh, that's fantastic. All right, Nick Harris, DallasCowboys.com. Thank you so much for the visit, brother. We will try to catch up with you again, but you will not pick a cooler background. Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I mean, maybe a cooler background, Chad. He could be Jimmy in the background. Or Tom.
That is easily the greatest accidental background I've ever heard of. You can't come up with a better accidental background for whatever you're doing than what he just did. He says he didn't do it on purpose. He just ducked into the first room he found. What are the chances that over one shoulder is Barry with the trophy and over the other is Barry getting doused, I'm assuming, in that game? That's crazy.
He was in the Barry Switzer suite.
He really was in the Barry Switzer room. And of course, we all know, as tortured Cowboys fans, that's the last day that the Cowboys played in a game that truly matters on a big level that Nick Harris has only read about.
So, Chad, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break. I got to go take a little boy's bathroom break.
Okay.
I got to like Forrest Gump pee. And I got to figure out the bathroom layout here. And we're only going to get a couple minutes. So you may have to hold down the fort for like 60 seconds while I scurry off to the bathroom. When we come back, I want to get back into this championship players discussion with the Longhorns. And I want to kind of go through some names of players that aren't in the group of 7 yet. What will they? Do we think they will? Do we think they won't? What is this season for a certain select group of players as we head into this season? We talked a lot about Quinn Ewers, but he's not the only one.
Fair enough.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look at a player that was the first commitment of the TCU class of 2020 and became the last signee of the Texas 2020 recruiting class, with a little stopover in Waco in between. That's right, Texas senior defensive back Jahdae Barron had one hell of a recruitment before eventually developing into one of the most important remaining players from a somewhat disastrous 2020 recruiting class. For those that might not remember, Barron finished as a mid 3-star prospect in the Rivals.com rankings while finishing 79th in the state and 72nd in the country as a cornerback. Should note for the record that I had Barron ranked as a 4-star prospect in my rankings and the number 30 overall prospect in the state. When we look at his recruitment, things really started to heat up following a junior day visit in February of 2019 to TCU and Gary Patterson. After visiting on the junior day in February, Barron committed just a couple of weeks later, citing that Patterson's track record of developing players was a big reason for his decision. Yet a little more than a month later, Barron backed out of his commitment to Patterson, primarily because his offer list started to take off shortly after his commitment, with the likes of Oklahoma State, Tennessee, and Arizona jumping into the mix. Before his decommitment, he actually took an unofficial visit to the 40 acres, although the Longhorns didn't offer. Fast forward to June 22nd, and Barron announced his commitment to Baylor. From that moment on, all the way through the rest of signing day, Barron was solid as a rock to the Bears, even in the aftermath of the departure of Baylor head coach Matt Rule. Things changed for Barron in April as he asked for Baylor to release him from his national letter of intent. Quote, "Thank you to the Baylor Nation for embracing me," he said on Twitter. "Today, I requested an official release from my NLI to Baylor and will begin looking for a new school to pursue my athletic dreams and career goals." 8 days later, Barron committed to Tom Herman's Texas Longhorns. Flipping Barron was a huge win for defensive backs coach Jay Valai, who had only been in Austin for a few months when he landed Barron. Barron was the 20th and final signee to a 2020 recruiting class that finished 16th in the nation. While Bijan Robinson is famously remembered as the headliner of the class, Barron was one of the 3 lowest rated prospects in the entire group, according to Rivals.com. Of the 2 players ranked lower than Barron, one of them was none other than All-America linebacker Jalen Ford.
All right, back on House Divided. Jeff Ketchum said he was taking a Forrest Gump pee break. How about the best P takes in movies. We'll get to that in a second. But first, a super chat 199. Sam never honed in the long ball 7.5 on our championship scale. Yeah, I probably agree to that. Let's grab another chat here. Colby S says, my question is, who will have the better NFL career, Sam or Colt? Colt's made some damn good money as a backup. Definitely Colt right now. We'll see where Sam ends up. I'd love to see Sam hang on and be a 2 or a 3 consistently, but I haven't seen it yet, and he hasn't gotten enough of a chance. It's kind of both of those things. And a Cowboys fan hits us up. Chris Nelson, you cannot trust Tyron to stay healthy. We do know that. He is definitely prone to some injury, and he wears braces that are for certain parts of the body, even if it's not the part of the body he's on. Yeah, okay, so somebody enjoyed the Forrest Gump line. Let's give him his love. 2 for 2. Fire lines that are fire. Too broke to pay attention. Giving him love on that one. So let's see. You got the Forrest Gump is a great one. Another Tom Hanks, underrated, A League of Their Own. The P take in A League of Their Own is fantastic. That's one of my favorite baseball movies, and it's a solid P. You get the Rosie O'Donnell reaction. You get the Madonna reaction. The fact that he's doing it in a room full of women is pretty entertaining. Here's the other one, slightly older school, the Frank Drebin in the bathroom when he's mic'd up. That's a pretty good P take in a movie because that's a P take combined with a you don't know you're mic'd up moment. And Frank Drebin goes into the bathroom and you get him singing too. Remember that? Like in the middle of it, you're hearing him peeing, but you're also hearing him singing. There's a lot going on in that scene. Those are the 3 I'll put up. 2 of them are Tom Hanks, interestingly enough. The other one, well, no, there's one more. The Austin Powers now catches back from his Forrest Gump moment. Ketch, I was just discussing the great P takes in movie history when they made the long P the joke. Remember Austin Powers when he comes out of the freeze?
Oh, yeah.
That scene was that was like Seth MacFarlane long. It just went on and on and on. And it just felt like, okay, guys, seriously, you went about, even I thought they went about 38 seconds too long there. So Ketch is back from the bathroom. Blake,
there's nothing worse, Chad, than when you think you're on the verge of being able to get that release, but the door shut.
Oh, you got a single hole.
You've been waiting for like an interview to end.
You got the one holer.
Scurry off, and then you have to do that thing where you're this close to acting like a little boy and like grabbing your private parts and just holding on for dear life.
Come on. Somebody mentioned the Austin Powers take. Somebody says Belushi and Animal House. I don't remember. What's the P take in Animal House? I don't remember it.
I don't either.
Not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to take you at your word there. I'm not the biggest Animal House fan. I think it's an overrated movie, and I think Belushi's talent got wasted.
How dare you?
Yeah, so I don't remember. I just don't remember the scene. Like, fill me in.
I don't care about that. You're talking mess.
I remember the
Animal House.
Yeah, the pimple thing and the guitar thing or whatever. That movie just doesn't stand the test of time the way I think it needs to. That's just me. It's an overrated movie to me.
All right, I'm going to ignore that you said that.
We could do a whole show on that one day. In fact, we could put both of them together because I also think Blues Brothers is overrated. So we could do that for a whole show.
I agree with you about that.
Okay, fair enough. Super chat Stanley says, dude was at Barry Switzer's house. Nothing worse than Barry Switzer. I know you think he's a nice guy, but he's also the devil. And you know what they say about OU. $9.99 is championship level. Thank you for the $9.99, Stanley. That's fantastic. That was well done.
He's a nice guy, but he's also the devil.
The devil.
That's what they said about Bob Stoops as well.
Nice guy, but he's also Satan.
No, just Satan. They didn't really say the nice guy part that I know of.
Oh, I see. They said half of that about Bob Stoops.
What about Lincoln Riley? Was he the devil?
Oh, no. He was just a huge problem for Texas fans. I don't know that he was ever considered the devil.
Switzer's absolutely the devil.
Switzer is. When you get to that week in October, if you're picking devils, I think it's either Switzer or a certain linebacker with crazy hair that played for Switzer. One of those guys is your ultimate devil, I think, if you're a Texas fan.
We're going to get Brian Bosworth on the show at some point.
Right, we do. Is he still in the Austin area? He used to be.
I think so. I've never interviewed Brian Bosworth.
Me either. And when they did the documentary on him, the 30 for 30, I guess it was well done. And he was so wonderfully honest through that thing. And for years we'd heard he was in the Austin area and he'd be on a show here and there, but I've never interviewed him either. That's a good goal to set. You and me interviewing the Boz could be quite interesting.
Oh, quite is maybe even an understatement at that point. I'm already thinking of all the questions I would have lined up for the Boz.
Yeah. I've seen him on a sideline a couple times, and I've been too intimidated to even speak to the man. Like, I just want to stay out of his way. He's Bosworth, and I don't want to mess with him.
Well, isn't he like a little guy now? Like, he's not the big brooding linebacker. Like, he looks like a normal human being now.
I mean, he's not what he was, but still bigger than me. Not that
Fair
that's
enough.
a bar. Not that that's a big bar to hit, but he's bigger than I am.
All right.
Certainly.
So, Chad, back to the championship players discussion.
Yes.
If you missed it, if you're just tuning in, the conversation is how many championship players do the Longhorns have on their roster? What we settled on in defining championship players, that they're not supporting guys. They're game winners. They're game changers. They're first team all conference. They dominate games. They're the ones that win you championships and not the guys that lose you. So we set it at like an 8. That your first team, all Big 12-ish, you're an 8 or above. And we said, I said anyway, did you disagree with any of those?
Honestly, I was just looking at your list. I could, if I wanted to be real critical, I could whittle you down to 5, maybe 4.
You would cut Barron and Watts out?
I would cut Barron and Watts, and then there'd be an argument for A.D. Mitchell hadn't shown it for this team. So do you take him off? Xavier Worthy hasn't quite had, hasn't been at the tip top, but Worthy to me still got to be in there. So I would go like Worthy, Sanders, Banks, Ford for sure. And then Mitchell would be a little shaky for me.
All right. Well, then let's talk about I want to talk about the rest of the defense this hour.
Okay.
If I say Tavondre Sweat, where is he? We're on the 10-point scale, right? So we're really talking about between 6 and 8.
Yeah.
Right? Where's Tavondre Sweat?
I'd say 7 and Cimarron.
Murphy.
Right about that same spot. 7-7-2, somewhere in there.
Alfred Collins.
Oh, man. I got to be careful because for me.
And we haven't seen it yet in the games either.
I know.
Just practice stuff.
I got to be honest with Alfred. I'll put a little chip on his shoulder and say that gets like a 6'7" to 6'9" kind of a thing.
Okay, I kind of had it. I was sitting at like we're on the same page,
right? It's about there because it needs to be there. I love 95 so much. I want it to happen. I want it to come through, but it hadn't been there yet.
Baron Sorrell.
Oh, he's more like a. See, I'd put him at like maybe a 7.5.
It's kind of what I was thinking.
Somewhere in there. I mean, ready to go over that hump into the 8s.
If I tell you that he's first team all Big 12 this year, that doesn't cause you to like pause. You can
I wouldn't. I think it's possible, absolutely possible, that he's up into the 8s and he's helping run this defense. Yes.
Ethan Burke, who we haven't seen a ton of.
Man, I'll be honest with you. Let me just double check this one. Other than like a couple flashes of moments on TV, I haven't seen Ethan Burke play very much football at all. If
you're a badass freshman and you haven't done it yet, do we just put you in the 6.5, 7 and say, do something before you could ever be any higher?
Yeah, I was going to say, 7 flat. Can we just lay him right there at 7 flat and say, now come on?
All badass freshmen just stay at 7 until otherwise earned. And they can fall back too. That's the thing when we're talking about this group of guys. So, okay, again, you and I are in lockstep so far. David Benda.
It's probably you going all the way to 6. I was going to say low 7s, but you're into the 6s.
He hasn't earned a 7 yet.
Okay.
I mean, I can't put you and I talked about Quinn Ewers and having a hard time really placing. He's like at a 7, maybe. We have people in the chat saying he's a 6. If Ewers is a 6, Benda's a 5.
Yeah, that's probably fair. What about this chat here? Some Too Broke to Pay Attention says, I'd say Sweat was an 8 last year. Would you go that high?
No way.
I wouldn't either.
No way.
No.
He'd have gone pro if he'd been an 8 last year.
All right,
seriously.
Now Paul's just being mean. Nope, sorry, wait, missed it. Paul's just being mean. Benda gets points for being a 35-year-old. See, that's just, there's no need. There's no need for that. Come on, man.
What about Terrence Brooks?
This is Terrence Brooks. First, this chat Texas guy says, doesn't the player need to be consistent on the field experience before consideration for over a 7? Kind of. That's sort of what we're saying, that those freshmen get put at 7.
But
Brooks,
Adrian Peterson was at 9 after he played his first game.
right. Yeah, you can notch it up pretty fast. Brooks, maybe, is it good enough to hover right around a 7?
He's kind of a 6.5.
Okay, not quite.
Hasn't played enough yet.
Yeah, you're right. There hadn't been a ton there.
And we're not saying that that's what these guys are going to be this season.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how much do you use projections here? If I'm a
doing
Texas
it with AD Mitchell.
Okay, right. That's kind of where I was looking at Mitchell as well, where I'm like, do I think he gets there by the end of the year? If somebody tells us, Ketch, that this team wins 9 or 10, you and I both think they're winning 9. We think they're playing for a Big 12 title. If that's true, and Quinn Ewers quarterbacks them to that game, and we think he's going to quarterback him to that game and maybe win the damn thing, are we saying then he's already, are we saying he's going to be an 8? 8, 5.
I think we all think he's going to be in that area. When we talk about this Texas team, they're 11th in the country in the preseason.
Yeah.
That is forecasting that he will be. Because if I told you before the season started that he was going to be a 7, where are you ranking Texas in the top 25?
Yeah, not 11.
Not 11.
Not 11. It would be lower than that. It would definitely be lower than that. Right, but
by the way, Blake says Sweat probably would have been drafted had he declared. No doubt about it. Moro Ajomo and Keandre Coburn were drafted. I don't know that they were 8s. I think one of the strengths of the Texas defense last year is that they had 4 defensive tackles that were all probably 7s. But I don't think anybody was an 8. And you know how I know that? None of them went pro. Like none of them used their season as a real springboard. They were solid. They were good players, but Texas didn't really have a difference maker in that position. We're really talking about difference makers once you get to 8 and above.
By the way, Ketch, how about this chat right here? Dad's just checking in here. Barry's checking in. Did y'all do 88 yet? We did discuss 88.
We literally, Barry, your ears must have been burning.
That's right.
It couldn't have been 5 minutes ago.
I love how it says Barry 88 is great, Sorrell. That's fantastic.
Honestly, Barry, we put him at a 7.5, and we both admitted that if he's first team all Big 12 this year, like we won't blink at all, that he's on the cusp of being the kind of guy that we're talking about.
Yep, absolutely.
At which point, young Barron will probably be going pro if he turns into the type of next level difference maker that we're asking about when we talk about championship players. Real quick, Jaron Thompson.
Yeah, like right in that 7 area again.
They got a bunch of guys in the 7s, don't they?
Right, that low 7, like not quite to 7.5 yet.
I think the bad news is they got a lot of 7s. I think the good news is they got a lot of 7s that when you have a bunch of 7s, that means you got a bunch of guys knocking on the door. Let me ask you this, offensive line. Banks, it's like an 8.5 and a 9, right?
Yeah, Banks is the dog. We know that.
I'll put Christian Jones at like a 7.5.
I was just thinking 7.5 when you said his name. Yes, simmering right there at that 7 to 7.5, waiting to make a move.
All of those interior guys, Hayden, Jake Majors, DJ Campbell, I think they're all sub 7 guys.
Yeah, they're all below that. Yeah.
And That's your Texas football team right now.
Yeah. No, that is a big one. By the way, Ketch, here's a former player. Throw a grade on this guy. We haven't talked about him all day. What about Deontay Foreman? He did win the Doak, says the Google Scholar.
I mean, in his one season, he was a 9.
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be at least 8.5, probably 9. Yep.
And what's crazy about that is that season starts with him sharing carries with Chris Warren. And that if Warren doesn't get injured early in the season, Deontay Foreman never happens. He and Warren are splitting carries. I don't know if he's even a 1,000-yard guy. Opportunity presented itself, and he took it and ran with it literally. And yeah, you'd have to put him squarely at a 9.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. We hit the top of the hour at 2:00. Ketch, are we just going to roll right into a little bit of crap bag? What are we doing?
Let's do it. Let's roll right into the crap bag. Everybody needs to know 2:20. We're 20 minutes away from talking more Alabama football with Kyle Henderson. He was a great guest when we had him on in week 1 of our show a couple of weeks ago. I can't wait to talk to him about the quarterback position, the scrimmage they had.
Yes.
Then I want to lay out for him this conversation that we're having. I want to know how many championship players he thinks Alabama has using the criteria that we're using.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Also, shout out to one of our chatters, Scott. I'm going to look it up for you. It says, Chad, what did the Aggies do with Milroe last year? How did they check in blitzes, stunts with tough reads to confuse? I'll double check on exactly what he did against A&M. I remember, not being overly freaked out by Milroe. I thought his game was a little clunky to me last season, but I'll go back and double check on what he did in that game. Obviously, A&M damn near found a way to, be in the game and had a chance to win it somehow. And I believe Milroe went the whole way for Bama in that game due to injury, but I'll double check that one for you, Scott. Thank you. Scott in Texas. By the way, Ketch is in Texas today, not in his normal spot. He's at Texas Card House. Go check out Texas Card House. If you love some cards, get out there. How many card games you looking at right now, Ketch?
I was just about to say they just started a 3rd table.
Yeah,
so business is picking up here at the Card House. It looks like they've got 3 full tables going right now. I see some new players at the table closest to me. Mm-hmm. I have not yet heard like an audible exhale from any of the tables. I don't know that anything has happened yet.
Okay.
That's caused a rise. But believe me, I'm itching for someone to go, oh.
So right now we're just building the pot. The pot is building is what you're saying.
I think what we're watching right now are those early round. This is like the first 3 rounds of a Floyd Mayweather fight.
Nice. Okay.
Lots of moving around, lots of jabbing. I have not seen or heard a pout. I haven't seen like all the chips in the middle of the table yet. Like I'm waiting to see something big happen. But believe me, I'm not watching you a lot. I'm watching the poker.
No big CompuBox numbers yet at Texas Card House. All right, it's House Divided on this Tuesday. So it is time for the Taylor Swift discussion. Ketch brought this up a while ago when I told him I went to Taylor Swift. I am wearing the Taylor Swift All Too Well, Where's the Scarf Jake shirt today. And I did not see it at the concert. I was the only one that wore it, so I feel pretty cool about that. 4 months ago, exactly, is when I took my daughter, my wife, friends of ours. We had a big group go to the Taylor Swift show. So, Ketch, I'm going to show you some sights and some, not sounds. I'm going to show you some sights, some pictures I took. And then you can ask whatever question you want from April 22nd. Blake, let's hit him with some pictures here to get his mind right on Taylor Swift. This is NRG Stadium in April of 23. There's the stage. That's our view. We're way back in the back, but we're straight on. Great stage, great show. And you see all those lights in the crowd.
How much did the tickets for those seats cost? Like $1,000 each?
Thankfully, no. See, we got in on the little code thing. I got lucky. I paid less than I did for the Harry Styles tickets. I bet I paid like $140 a pop.
Were they going for like $1,000 on the night of the concert?
Absolutely.
Damn.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it was silly. Yeah, back there where we were, I'm going to guess if you wanted to sit where we were and you bought your tickets like that day, you're going to have to drop like $650 for sure.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah.
And you
silly.
never thought about selling?
No, absolutely not. Not for the experience with my daughter. I had to watch it. I had to be there to see it.
Okay.
So the lights that you see are wristbands, Ketch. We're old men talking about this, but it was so cool. They're wristbands you wear that have lights on them, and they're set to go off at certain paces and everything. And so it was very, very cool. All right, so Blake, hit him with the next one. The stage was unbelievable. Taylor goes over 3 hours. You see that little block in the middle? That's Taylor on the raised stage in the middle. They can do all kinds of crazy things with the stage. Those are dancers in the background on the main stage, like with big, wing kind of things. They're swinging around. There's smoke everywhere. And you can see the big screens. Hell of a show. She went 3 hours and 10 minutes and played 44 songs.
Good God.
It was crazy. All right.
She
next
gives you
one.
your money's worth.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. The next one shows off the stage a little blurry, but you see how that stage goes up? They can make it a little, the stair step and everything. This was during one of my favorite Taylor Swift songs now that I've seen it live. Don't Blame Me off of Reputation. It's one of the best Taylor Swift songs. It needs to get talked about more, and it's such a good song live. They did incredible stuff with the stage. On the next one, you'll see those lights just further away. Just great visuals. The lights were amazing. And I think this next one is my daughter's favorite song. My daughter is an enchanted freak. It's not my favorite Taylor Swift song, but she couldn't wait. She started crying. The dress changes every night, and the Swifties follow the dress changes. But that was a great song. And then finally, Ketch, we'll give you another shot of those lights. That's what they do. They can turn all the lights a certain color, so you're a part of the light show in the arena. It's absolutely incredible. It was an incredible show over 3 hours. So there are my pictures for you. NRG 4 months ago. What do you want to know from Swifty Dad after the show?
How many times did she change?
There are 10 albums and 10 eras that are celebrated on this night at least 10 times.
So 10 different outfits.
At least. Yeah, because each era is an album. It's at least that. I'm going to guess it might be as many as 12. It was incredible how many times she was in different outfits.
Do you think, because, they do these shows, and it's 3 nights in a row in Houston and 3 nights in a row in Dallas.
Correct.
You think they wash the outfits, or does she pull a Ketch in a Chad and she puts on the outfit from the night before and clearly she's bathed, but have the outfits been washed?
I'm going to say everything gets clean. This tour is A level. And like I said, she's going over 3 hours every night. I bet you everything is baby soft and downy clean and ready to roll every show.
You missed it. A guy walked in here just a second ago and asked if he could take a phone call in here. But he said it in I don't know what language he was speaking.
Oh,
so
okay.
When someone comes in to ask you if they can use the phone in a language that you don't understand, what do you tell them?
Did you just do this?
No. I said yes.
Did you go?
And so then the manager of the club just hung up a "please do not disturb" sign.
Ooh, you got to look at you. Now you're special. Now they think you're
I am at the Texas Card House and here on Research Boulevard in Anderson Mill. It was funny. Yeah, whatever that guy thought I was doing, it wasn't important.
I just love that as he walked in to do that, I was talking about Taylor Swift. That's another weird part of that story. That was bizarre.
So anyway, I can't think of any Taylor Swift questions to ask you. You told me she played 44 songs, so there's no reason to ask you did she play this? She played all the songs.
Any monster you could think of, she played. I mean, it was.
What did she close the show with?
She closes with Karma. Karma off of. She closed with the new stuff with the Midnights. I think she closed with Karma, which I think is a Midnight song.
Is Blank Space a middle of the concert song?
Middle towards the end, as I recall. That's a great song live. There's so many great songs live, and the way the crowd reacts to her is It's magic. I mean, it's absolutely magical to watch. They are so with her. Here's my favorite story from the whole set. I'm wearing this shirt that says "All Too Well," and without going into it, this is the song about Jake Gyllenhaal, right? And this goofy scarf. All right, so she makes a 10-minute version that went on the reissue of the album, and in the middle of the show, she says, "So if I thought I'd play one more song from this album for you if you've got 10 minutes to spare," and she starts playing the 10-minute version. Ketch, they're with her every second of the 10 minutes. They don't want the 6-minute version. They want the 10-minute version, and they screamed every word. My kid was losing her mind screaming every line of a 10-minute song, other than like Stairway and Bo Rap. I can't think of another song in my life that fans actually show up and go, "Boys, give us the 10-minute song." I don't want to hear a 10-minute song live. Like, that's crazy, but they would have been mad if she didn't do that. It was nuts.
Top 10 concert for you all time. Last question.
Boy, I've seen a ton.
I know, that's why I asked the question. It's not you've been to 4 shows.
I have seen an absolute ton of shows. For me, I'm going to say it probably falls outside the top 10. I'll call it a top 20 out of respect for the stuff I've seen. For my kid, obviously it's right up there, but it is one of the most unique shows I've ever been to, and it's the one and only like mega pop show I've ever been to. Not one and only now. Now I've taken her to a couple, but it's the biggest mega pop show I've ever seen, and I'm really glad I did, because I never saw Michael, Prince, or Madonna, like in the run, in the prime. I've never seen Beyonce. I've never seen any of those shows, and it was really cool to see. So I'm going to say like top 15 to 20 maybe in terms of the full scope of it.
JJ, this is called the crap bag section of the show. That's what the hell this is.
Yeah, that's exactly right. By the way, speaking of the crap bag, Ketch, I think you know this guy, the one and only Rob Lazar, reached out to me the last couple days asking how I was doing, upset that the radio thing had ended, but I told him what we were doing, and he said his one question was, "So are you still doing that crap bag thing?" And I said, "Yes, sir, 2:00. So sadly, I think this might be the first crap bag he may have tuned into. So I think Lazar might have checked in and maybe checked back out when he heard Taylor Swift. I'm sorry, Lazar.
It happens.
I'm sorry. But again, it's an America type show today. People love or hate Longhorns, Cowboys, Crimson Tide, and Taylor Swift. And we're discussing all 4 today. The Taylor discussion is now over for today, but it is the crap bag on a Tuesday. And I did have a couple of birthdays for you, Ketch. I mentioned it was Jizz's birthday for the music fans. It's also Vernon Reed's birthday of Living Color. I'm a big Living Color guy. And rest in peace, Lane Staley of Alice in Chains would have had a birthday today. Did you know he died exactly 8 years after Kurt Cobain? Did you know that?
I did not.
I didn't know that. Sad. I'm
not a big Alice in Chains fan. I'm changing the subject on you because I'm the type that has a thought in his head and then just blurts it out.
That's what the crap bag's for.
We're going to have Kyle Henderson on to talk Alabama football in less than 10 minutes. I just sent him the link to join the studio. How many championship players, if we've got 7 for Texas at this point, what do we think he says about Alabama? We're going to lay out the criteria.
Right.
Do you think they're in double digits? Do you think that going into the season, that's the difference between an Alabama and Texas? It's 3 extra, 4 extra.
Yeah, probably. I was 10 to 12 is what he'll end up saying. I think if he lays it all out, I'm going to say it's around 10 or 12. Which think about the number there. It's like half of the starting 22. I'm going to say it's like 10 to 12.
And I wonder where he says their quarterbacks are, because if we've got Quinn Ewers at a 6.75 ish, I think you got to put all their quarterbacks at 5s at best.
Yeah, I just don't. No, I can't wait to hear from him, because again, those shaky games last year, we've talked about what the 2 teams from Texas almost did to them. I mean, their season got, in their mind, derailed anyway. right? They lost games they're not supposed to lose. But what if they had lost to Tennessee and Texas and Texas A&M? I mean, it would have just been,
it probably should have happened.
And yeah, right. I mean, it was right there to happen. Certainly in the Texas case, A&M's was a little clunkier, but they had a shot. They were right there somehow. So yeah, I'm interested to hear what he thinks of the quarterbacks. Because again, if you're a fan and all three guys take reps with the ones, that's just a Texas fan would have been baffled by that this week. Ewers, Arch, and Malik all got reps with the ones. Huh? What?
And Malik was the only guy that scored a touchdown with the ones.
Exactly. Like there's no way. And by the way, I watched a little video of Kyle wrapping things up from last weekend. And when he mentioned that, the only one to score. And he said, and that's basically the first good news we've heard about Buckner this whole camp. And I thought, okay. I mean, yeah, that's what was great about getting Kyle on last time is that great honesty that he threw out. And he talked about, the fact that he's going to tell it like he sees it. So just from the reports they're getting, just what is that vibe right now in T-Town, knowing what's always up for grabs, what's always on the line, but now knowing they've got Middle Tennessee State to go before Texas, how prepped does he think they're going to be for the Longhorns coming to town? Can't wait to talk to him about it.
Well, he's ready to go. He's in his studio.
Yeah, he is.
He's in our studio.
Show me a background to get me excited. Where's that exciting background?
So we can see the background.
Yo, what's up, fam? Good to be back.
What's up, man?
Good to be back. We have internet in Mexico. Someone said I was from Mexico last time or wherever. It's like, no, I'm from New Mexico, home of Breaking Bad, live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This isn't the stadium. The real stadium is not too far away, but I'm happy to talk Alabama versus Texas. Although you guys have to remember, Alabama does have a game before Texas, right?
Oh no, I just mentioned Middle Tennessee State, but if I'm a Bama fan, I'm a little concerned just like if I'm a Texas fan, I'm concerned that, Rice is not going to be able to sharpen that iron quite enough. So for you, do you think there's a little bit of a concern amongst the houndstooth crowd of like, hey man, I don't know if that's enough to get us ready for Texas coming in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, these first week matchups are a joke. I mean, I think they're kind of these warm-up games, but iron sharpens iron, and we're going to find out, what type of iron each of these teams is week 2. I think there's a lot of matchups that we've continued to talk about. There's a lot of question marks still with the Alabama Crimson Tide, most notably about the quarterback position. I can fill you in a little bit more on that. But yeah, I mean, Middle Tennessee State, what are we going to find out from that game? Absolutely nothing. I mean, it's a game where you got to stay healthy. You got to find some sort of continuity with your offense and your defense. You got to, Saban won't, be worried about running it up or anything like that. And I think there's a big misconception is that as soon as Alabama gets up by 2 or 3 or 4 touchdowns or whatever, that he pulls out the starters. That's not the case. I've always wondered why Saban doesn't do that. And the reason is this. Saban likes his players to be fourth quarter ready. The game against Texas is 100% going to go the distance, right? So you don't want to have the players just to play 3 quarters and then be fighting tooth and nail in the fourth quarter. So 100%, it's not like he won't call off the dogs. The game plan will be different as you get to the fourth quarter, but the starters will stay in 100%.
Kyle, you'll be proud that I've turned into a addict of the YouTube page. I've been watching daily everything that you have. I feel like I watched I watched the post-scrimmage stuff from Saturday multiple times. Let's start with the quarterbacks. It was fascinating that 3 guys ran with the first team.
Mm-hmm.
Jalen Milroe didn't lead the offense to a touchdown in the scrimmage, but there's still a sense that he's going to start the opener. But I don't feel like I have, and I'm a couple of thousand miles away, I don't have a handle for what in the world I expect when Texas and Alabama play. I think Jalen Milroe starts based on listening to kind of how the scrimmages go, but it certainly feels like he has a precarious hold on the job.
Okay. So let's talk quarterbacks at Alabama. So the starter for sure will be Jalen Milroe.
For sure.
The official depth chart comes out on Monday. I don't know about you guys, like your depth chart. We get one depth chart. It's put on the desk right before Saban talks at 11:55 a.m. like clockwork. Saban will be wearing the same exact thing that he wore last year for week 1 and the year before that. It's kind of scary. So we get the depth chart, and then everyone takes a picture, and it's like a race to Twitter who can come out with the catchy headline. No slash listed by Jalen Milroe. Internet is broken. There's your tweet, all the reporters, right? So, right, like that's going to be it. So the question is, who is going to be the second quarterback and the guy putting pressure on Milroe, the guy that Milroe is going to be looking over his shoulder every time, there's an incomplete pass? Well, that is going to be between, as of today, August 22nd, that is going to be between Ty Simpson and Tyler Buckner. With Buckner, yes, he did have some momentum, and he finally found his rhythm. He's the Notre Dame transfer that came here, tied into Tommy Rees's system, who also came from Notre Dame. But I think we're starting to see kind of the dust settle, and there's starting to be a 1, 2, and 3, with Buckner being number 3. Now, the number 4 quarterback who people are talking about, this is kind of funny, but people would probably like to see Julian Sain, who's the number 1 quarterback in the class 2024, be the quarterback at Alabama. Like, the next guy is always the best guy, but it's Dylan Lonergan. Dylan Lonergan is a true freshman, and the hype is real. Like, he's doing a fantastic job. He's out of Georgia. He's a freshman. There's no speculation that he's going to come in and steal the spot. So you have Milroe for sure as your quarterback, and he's going to play against Middle Tennessee State. He's going to do his thing, and people are going to be talking about him. And then I think against Texas, you're going to see the same thing. I think it's going to be too tough to prepare for Milroe for anybody. I mean, you're looking at a 6'2", 230-pound quarterback that runs, a 4.4 probably. And, with Alabama's arsenal of running backs that they have, I think they're going to be in a pretty good position with Tommy Rees, considering that they've been working with a lot of 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets, and still looking for a wide receiver that can catch the football over here, though.
Kyle, somebody asked us on the chat earlier about Milroe and how he performed against A&M last year. And I just went back and was kind of going over it. Clearly, Bama was trying to, utilize him a little bit, but use the running game. It was 51 rushing attempts, and he only had 19 attempts, but he did have 3 touchdowns, did throw a pick in the game. So there was a little bit of up and down for him. But talk to me about the trust level you think the coaches are going to have for Milroe. Are we going to see this as an offense that really does lean on that run game and he feels protected? Or are we going to feel like this is, the Bama offense we've seen for the last few years where it's like, no, we're coming after you with all knives out and we're throwing the ball as well?
That's a really good question. I would say it's probably more like, let's kind of lean run heavy and see if we can move the football against Texas defensive line. You have 2 tackles who return. You have J.C. Latham. Well, one's a freshman by the name of Caden Proctor. Both of them are 365 pounds. You have a really good guard in Tyler Booker, who people are really excited about. He should probably be an all SEC type player. Seth McLaughlin, who is their center, and his mantra is run the damn ball. He has a hat that literally says run the damn ball that he walks around campus with. If we were like, yeah, run the damn ball, and he's like, yeah, he kind of has that mentality that Landon Dickerson did a couple years ago. Like, that guy gave 0 Fs. I mean, it was great. And you want that from your center, right? He's kind of like the ultra alpha there. So I think what the game plan for Alabama is, look, can Jalen Milroe throw the football? Absolutely. But you have to keep your defense off position. And I think when you have a tight end in Amari Niblack, and you have a transfer tight end in CJ Dupree or Danny Lewis, you can run these 12 personnel sets and get creative. And I think one of the things when you look back at Tommy Rees's offense, and I think I might have mentioned this last time, I play DraftKings, and I would always be curious to see how he would utilize his tight ends. I had no idea that he was going to be coming to Alabama. So you have some different tight ends that I think they might be able to work with on some short passing routes. But the thing about the weird theme out of the biggest storyline out of Tuscaloosa, besides the quarterback competition, is the dropped passes. And there was dropped passes against Texas, to be honest, for sure. Guys dropped passes against Texas from Alabama, and there's been nothing but dropped passes here. So much so that one of the guys who even works for the University of Alabama said that it was embarrassing that there's these 4- and 5-star players on Alabama that are dropping the football. Absolutely. I mean, they're still looking for a wide receiver to kind of be that Velcro-esque wide receiver. And I think we are so spoiled with Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, Jalen Waddle, Smitty, Devontae Smith, who won a Heisman Trophy. But no, it hasn't been the case last year. And I think there is a guy, Malik Benson, who's a junior college transfer, but we're still looking for a wide receiver that can be the true number 1.
Kyle, I've got a question for you, but our favorite truck driver, Buck Wild Longhorn, jumped into the super chat.
Yes.
That's right, Chad. He wants a horn right now. He says, I don't see Milroe having much success throwing against our secondary. Will Milroe running or the running backs be the most effective?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and stay safe on the road. I have a bunch of truck drivers that call into my shows too. They love it. I get it. It's easy to access here. If you want more Bama football, go to Bama football on YouTube. I think so. You can reach. So I had a caller on my call-in show say this: you can reach your hand into a jar with the Alabama running backs and pull one out, and any one of those guys can contribute at a high level. So you guys know Jace McClellan. We talked about him last year. Had a touchdown run. Behind him is Roydell Williams, kind of built like a bowling ball, 5'9", maybe 205 pounds, who's really difficult to stop inside the red zone. And then you have Jam Miller. You guys are probably going to learn about Jam Miller, or the world of college football will. He's probably about 210, 215 pounds, and he's had 2 really good scrimmages. Not a lot of people have been talking about him, but he had a really good Sugar Bowl performance as well. And then true freshman Justice Haynes, he scored 3 touchdowns in the spring game. And Coach Saban, he talks about freshmen when they're contributing at a high level, but Justice Haynes, I mean, a lot of people feel that he could be a big-time player this year as a freshman running back, which is pretty amazing. So between Milroe's running abilities and the running backs, I think it's one of the same. I think that's going to be very hard to stop. And, the RPOs that Alabama should be able to execute against, a lot of teams this year is going to be probably their bread and butter.
That would be former Texas commitment Jam Miller, just for those of you.
For
those of you who don't remember.
Yeah, you also have to point out, Ketch, when your name is as cool as Jamarion, to go with Jam, that just sends you to the extra level of cool. Like you already have a cool name, but you're going to go with an even cooler nickname. Yeah, man, they call me Jam. All right, that's awesome.
Well, the thing is, his older brother Damian signed with Texas as a wide receiver. Had Damian stuck with Texas and not had, if I'm not mistaken, it was academic issues back in the day, that Jam Miller might be the starting running back for Texas right now. Again, a former Texas commitment, and then Alabama came calling, and you can't really get upset at Jam Miller for wanting to go to Alabama.
He's very talented for sure. Absolutely. So I'm not surprised to hear kind of the pedigree and that he was offered by Texas or whoever else, because he's doing a stellar job this fall camp.
So the question I wanted to ask you, we're talking today about championship level players. It's a question that when Tom Herman was a coach at Texas, a local media guy would ask him every year, how many championship level players do you think you have? But it's a very vague, it's not, we had to define what championship level players are. And so we decided that on a 10-point scale, if you're an 8, that means you're like first team all conference level-ish. So we came up with 7 Longhorns that we think are championship level players. 2 receivers, tight end, Kelvin Banks, Jalen Ford, a couple guys in the secondary. For Alabama, what's your instinct tell you in terms of how many championship level guys they have that on a 1 to 10 scale, they start the season out at an 8? I'm guessing Alabama's got 30 guys who are 7s that can become 8s, but who do they have that are guaranteed 8s right now?
All right, Chad, will you help me out? Will you write this down while I talk about this? Okay, so here we go. So the number 1 guy who is definitely, he's probably a 10, is Dallas Turner, outside linebacker, 100% champion style player. I'd also put as a number 10 would be Kool-Aid, JaQuincy McKinstry, who's a returning All-American. Also a very, very dangerous punt returner. I mean, the guy averaged like 15 or 16 yards per punt return. He almost broke like 5 or 6. I mean, Kool-Aid, we just went from Jam Miller, but you got a guy named Kool-Aid, right?
They got Kool-Aid and Jam in Tuscaloosa.
And he's going to have his hands full, absolutely, with Texas. But the guy is absolute championship player. Then you have a 10 or even an 11 would be Will Reichard. Will Reichard is the all-time leading scorer at Alabama. He's a field goal kicker. Everybody knows about him. He hit some big kicks last year. He missed he missed one crucial kick last year, but all-time leading scorer coming back. So I think he is certainly up there as well. On the defensive side, let me kind of scroll through in my mind. I would say a 7 kind of trying to turn into an 8 would be Jaheim Otis. He's a big defensive tackle, probably, 330 pounds that people are really excited about. Let me think if there's anyone else on the defensive side. Probably not on the defensive side. So on the offense,
that you think would be all SEC coming into the year.
yeah, potentially Terry and Arnold at the corner spot. But a lot of these guys, look, Alabama doesn't return a lot. Like, some of the guys have experience, but not an overwhelming amount of experience. I mean, Justin Ebogbe, who was a defensive lineman who's played in a ton of games, but he only played in 4 last year. So he has to kind of reprove himself. We talked to him today during the media opportunity, but still, like, those guys aren't, probably 8s or 10s. Those other guys are 10s for sure. On the offensive side, you have J.C. Latham, who's a tackle. Yeah, he's a 10 for sure. I think he's probably the best tackle, if not one of the best in the SEC. Tyler Booker is an 8. He's a guard. I'm not going to list Milroe there just yet because it's too small of a sample size. The running backs, Jace, I would probably say he's like a 7. I don't think he's an 8. Wide receivers, I don't really see any of those guys being an 8. So I think that's pretty fair assessment. I mean, those are the guys, like the guys that are in that spot, those 8s or the 10s that I had listed, 100%. And those are probably your first round draft picks. But outside of that, I think there's a lot of guys that still have to earn that, 8 or 10 reputation.
All right. So I counted about 5 to 7 guys, depending on the numbers he was using there. He's right around that number.
Chad, I think he's a tough grader. If he was grading Texas, I think Barron, Watts, both of them go. And then we might have a conversation about A.D. Mitchell. It sounds fairly even on paper.
No, I know. I think he might make the argument I made earlier for Texas where, if it's Xavier Worthy, if it's Sanders, if it's Banks and Ford, then it becomes, do you really go with Barron and Watts? Mm-hmm. And then with A.D. Mitchell? Like, how do you, with what A.D. Mitchell did at Georgia and he's transitioning to Texas, can you already say that guy is an 8 or higher? That's what we were discussing earlier, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I got it. But I think, I'm a tough grader, but that's kind of the standard here. And there's been years where there's been maybe 10 guys, but I don't think this year is certainly it. Entering, the preseason. In fact, the all SEC team, Alabama only had 1 player on the first team all SEC, which was J.C. Latham. And I think the only 2 players on defense were Dallas Turner and Kool-Aid, and first team was Will Reichert. So I mentioned those guys, but outside of that, that was kind of the lowest number of players that I've seen on the first team all SEC ballot since I've been covering Alabama.
By the way, JD says in the chat, if Latham is a 10, then so is Banks. Yeah. I mean, they're both going to be first round draft picks as left tackles. So
Yep. By the way, Kyle, you mentioned that Bama it's one of those things when a school says they may go with a freshman at left tackle, people could get nervous. They could freak out. When Bama says they're going with a freshman at left tackle, all I think of is that must be a damn special freshman. Talk to us about Proctor and what you've seen from him so far. And you've said he's basically taken all meaningful reps, correct?
So to start, Caden Proctor, he's a giant. I think he's like 6'7", 360 some pounds or whatever. Kind of like, remember when Evan Neal came in? Evan Neal came from the IMG, and he actually started at guard at 6'7", which is pretty amazing. Talks about the athleticism that he came in with, and then he transitioned out to tackle. Mm-hmm. Caden Proctor hasn't seen any time at guard. He's just been at tackle, and he was the number 2 tackle on that left side, battling with Elijah Pritchett, who's a redshirt freshman. But he has, I would go ahead and say he's won that job as the first team tackle. He's a mauler. He's a monster. I think he's still trying to get that experience that he's going to need. It's going to take some time. I mean, when the bullets start flying, we really start to see how good these guys are. But what Alabama has done is they moved Tyler Booker, who's a tremendous guard. They have moved him from right guard, who is next to J.C. Latham, to the left guard position to add some veteran experience right next to him. And I think that's a really good move. So Alabama has, they're trying to build their second team offensive line and, maybe go like 7 or 8 deep if they can on the O-line. Right now, I'd probably say they are, comfortable with 7 offensive linemen, but that's probably not enough for Coach Saban. I know he's still kind of monitoring the second tier of that offensive line, but Caden Proctor, I mean, he's got the size and he's got the athleticism. Some of the guys that Eric Wolford brought in. So Eric Wolford came in from Kentucky to Alabama, And the guys that he recruited to Alabama were all like 6'7" and above. Caden Proctor, William Forkby, you have Seth McVay. All these guys are like 6'7", 350, 360. So he brought some towers over.
And when we get to September 9th, obviously Texas fans will tell you they've needed pressure these last few years that maybe they haven't gotten. So they're going to try to send guys and test Proctor. You think he passes that test with flying colors on September 9th? Do you think it's going to be one of those nice, no news is good news because they really don't get by him? Or do you think that's something to really watch in the game?
Probably something to watch. I would, like I said, and the Bullets start flying. And I mean, that game's going to be, going a million miles an hour. I mean, I think Kevin Steele, Alabama's defensive coordinator, had a good analogy. He's talking about, kind of rotating guys in and out and the speed, and says that, some people can drive on a country road. Some people can drive, in the city. Some people can drive on the 405 in LA. But there's only few people that can drive NASCAR. And like, it's the speed is incredible. And these guys, I mean, he has zero game experience, zero. Then again, he does probably go against Dallas Turner, who we said is a first-round NFL guy. They'll probably get him up to speed in that regard. But until we actually start to see him play, I mean, he's a true freshman.
Texas fans heard that he would be starting. It was hard not to think of Kelvin Banks. Same situation last year, his second start against Alabama, playing against Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and all of the guys that they could throw at him. And you felt like when that game was over, you're like, okay, they got a left tackle. Like, that guy can play. Yep. I kind of feel like that will be a bit of a coming out party potentially for Proctor. When that game is over, I think there's a very good chance that we'll go, okay, so in 3 years, Proctor's a first-round draft pick, and he is fine right now.
Yeah. I mean, look, the offensive line is going to be very good for Alabama. I don't think I wasn't too excited about the offensive line last year, that there were some holes, but from what we hear, at least from that first year, that front five, like they're solid. Alabama's offensive line is coming together really nicely. The running backs, there's plenty of them. The quarterback, I think it's going to be Milroe, tough to beat. The tight ends are, probably average still. And then the wide receivers are still kind of up in question, but clearly, there's guys, but it's nothing like Texas wide receivers. Like, you're not coming in with these ultra elite, guys who are making the headlines. We're still trying to figure out which wide receivers are going to step up.
Kyle, back to Milroe for a second, mainly because there's one bald guy on this show that may or may not have called him a young Donovan McNabb when he was in high school, and that hasn't materialized yet. He's got the big old arm. He looks the part in a uniform. He looks like an NFL player in a uniform.
Yeah.
But I get the sense when people talk about I'm rooting for Milroe. Like, I want him to have a big year. I want to be able to not laugh at myself when I think about the Donovan McNabb comment that I made, which, by the way, I've never made about any other player ever. Like, I liked Jalen Milroe in high school that much. What's he got to, like, I get the sense that people think he's at some point this season going to lose the job. But I remember people said that about Jalen Hurts too once upon a time. Part of me wonders how much this is just at Alabama, the standards are so high that even when you've got a really good player, it's like, oh, well, the guy behind him is going to be better. Is Milroe really in a precarious place, or is he really on the verge of a breakout? And a lot of people just aren't giving him space to grow as a player.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I remember when it was the COVID year and Mac Jones was slated to be quarterback, and nobody wanted him to play. Like, they were like, don't, whatever you do, just don't start him. Start the true freshman Bryce Young. Please don't play him. Mac Jones comes out, and I mean, you could put his stats against Bryce, Tua, Jalen. I mean, I think he was like had a 77 efficiency rating, and that team went undefeated during the COVID year, all SEC schedule, and he balled out, right? And everybody was judging from when he came in against, I don't know, like Arkansas and threw an interception or something like that. I'm not saying that Jalen Milroe is going to come out and just completely blow it up, but I think he has enough talent to win games. And that's the most important thing. Coach Saban had probably the most underrated soundbite of this fall camp, and I think it was a huge nugget. He was like, I don't care about stats. I care about winning. And I mean, at the end of the day, like, what's more important, having a high efficiency rating or winning games? I clearly it'd be great if you could have both, but at the end of the day, like, you need a quarterback that can win games. Jalen Milroe was put in against Arkansas to continue to beat Sam Pittman head to head. That's a tough environment, right? That's Sam Pittman's a beast. He was put in the game against Texas A&M to win the game. They weren't trying to tie the game. Like, they were trying to win the game. He won that game too. Tyler Buckner, the guy we're talking about, he lost to Marshall. He lost to Ohio State. Ty Simpson hasn't played. So the guy that we know right now that can, at least go into battle with, a 2-0 record is Jalen Milroe. And I don't know, what he's going to do stats wise, but I know he's capable of winning high profile games. He's already done that, in my opinion. He has athleticism to do it. If these wide receivers can, catch the football for him and he can get some rhythm, I think, he'll do just fine.
Kyle, one more from me. Kyle Henderson, Bama football on YouTube. Check out the page if you have not, if you're looking for the Bama info as we get closer to September 9th. Talk to me about Saban for a second. We were talking about Sark and Jimbo earlier. I feel like both those coaches are really in a not weirdly good mood, but they both seem kind of loose, especially Jimbo right now. But Sark also feels confident when he talks about his team. Give me your sense for what Saban has sounded like. He's a guy who we've always talked about. He'll kind of invent something to get mad at, out of nowhere. He always feels like there's this weird edge to him. But I watched your report on the scrimmage, and I thought he was business as usual. I thought he respectfully answered every question, didn't seem too bitchy. What do you think about Saban right now, the mindset as we are, 11 days from kick?
So Saban has this thing called rat poison, right? So when they're number one, like, anything good about the team is considered rat poison. And that means players like eating like the positive news that they're all Americans or that they're going to be blah, blah, blah. And he calls it rat poison. So what he has this year is reverse rat poison for the first time that I've ever covered Alabama. So now everyone's like, Saban's lost his fastball. They don't have a quarterback. This is the time. Like I had a caller this morning was like, people in Texas are so excited to get the opportunity to play Alabama and LSU. I asked Brian Kelly, what did that win do for your program? I know the past doesn't, predict the future, but he's like, we know now we can play with Alabama, and so do the players. And I think Saban is just loving that because he's getting to play those sound bites. He's pinning that on the wall. Tennessee beat Alabama last year. When I would go around, it was like never going to happen for the poor Tennessee fans. So it's like, it was just never going to happen. And it finally happened. And, they almost burnt down Knoxville. So look, Saban is loving this to the max. It's not, Alabama lost 2 games last year by a total of 4 points. Has Saban lost his fastball? I think people just kind of wait and see, but he's liking that. I think, his attitude has been pretty funny. And he said that he had a good soundbite recently. He said, you got to know when to keep kicking the player's ass. And he's like, I think I got to keep kicking it. So he's been in pretty good spirits. He looks good. He's got the fresh, hair was just recently dyed. And he looks great. He's been happy. He's kind of been whistling off. And usually that's a good sign because I think he has some reverse rat poison for the first time.
The old reverse rat poison. I have not heard that. Kyle, before we let you go, we had one more super chat question. I was literally going to wave you goodbye, but then Tom G jumped in with $10, and who am I to turn down $10?
Yeah, sure.
Going into he's going straight to the super chat. His question is, how many turnovers would it take against Texas before Jalen Milroe gets pulled? He says 6-5 ratio, touchdown to turnovers last year, if read correctly.
I would have to say like 3 or something like that. 2, you're just like, okay, look, things aren't going well. 3, you're like, dude, get out of here. We tried it, but I would say 3, but, and who knows? I promise you the first turnover that Milroe has, people are going to, oh my God. Because that's all they talk about. As soon as I bring up Milroe's name, there's like turnover machine. He's the biggest turnover machine there's ever been. So yeah, I would say 3, but I guess we'll have to, wait to see if that does happen.
Kyle, what happens if he does what Tua did that last preseason game and he throws a pick on the very first play against Middle Tennessee?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know. I just, anytime, like I said, anything that he does is going to be so heavily scrutinized. I mean, this is the biggest quarterback. I'm loving it. The quarterback battle. I mean, because we did have Jalen and Tua for a little bit. And then they just straight up did Jalen. They're like, hey, look, like it's just not going to work out. And Tua went on. But the amazing thing with that was that Jalen stuck with the team. This is before the transfer portal and all this stuff. He stayed with the team and then came back and won the game where he was benched in Georgia against the Georgia Bulldogs. People were crying. Like it was a movie moment. So, but I'm loving the quarterback situation. So I'm riding out Texas. I'm riding out the quarterback as long as I can.
Yeah.
Right.
Play the hits like an FM DJ.
That's
Kyle
it.
Henderson, Bama football on YouTube. You must subscribe. You must watch. He informs, he entertains, and he does it all from Juarez, Mexico.
Coming to you from Juarez, Mexico, Kyle Henderson, Bama football in Espanol.
Kyle, man, have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you game week, all right?
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Yeah.
Dude, that's fantastic. Live from Tijuana is Kyle Henderson. What in the world?
The thing is, the thing he had to admit, it was like, well, I am from New Mexico originally. So,
yes,
we do touch. There is like touching that takes place.
Okay, so let me just review here, Ketch, because when you asked him about the championship players, he did end up with a number that was less than what we had thought. Because again, we were thinking it might be around 10. He was putting that mark for a badass Bama team. And again, he was proving himself to be a hard grader. So he ended up with about 5 to 7 names in his list. And here's all I'm going to say. If you had asked me that question about A&M, how many championship players are on your team? If the Aggies were like preseason, what is Bama? 6, 5, 4,
Yeah.
whatever it is. If A&M was preseason that, and you asked me that question, and the third player out of my mouth was the kicker, what would you have done? You would have started Aggie jokes flying at me like crazy. Just for the record, the kicker was the third name out of his mouth. Now, I know he's a hard grader.
Well, look, he said
I'm just
there are years when we've got like 10. It's like, look, there are years when this team has 10 first-round draft picks, and It is what it is.
He said
This
Dallas.
is the more vulnerable Alabama team.
Right. He said Dallas. He said Kool-Aid, and then he went to the kicker. And
then he goes on the offensive side of the ball. He listed 2 of the offensive linemen.
Yep. Listed linemen, and then other than Turner, he went to the defensive side, and he did not come up. Well, sorry, Turner and Kool-Aid, obviously. He didn't come up with anybody else that he would say was up to that 8 to 10 level. So just to kind of point that out.
If you're Texas, you feel like you can win this game. He didn't mention any quarterbacks. He didn't mention any running backs. He didn't mention any wide receivers. He didn't mention any tight ends. He didn't mention any defensive tackles. He didn't mention any linebackers. I mean, this is an Alabama team that they've got players. They've probably got 50 guys who are 7s, but not quite 8s yet. It makes the game in 18 days a hell of a lot of fun just to talk about, because I don't know about either quarterback. I give Texas the edge. Did you get a sense? Am I reading Kyle wrong? And that both he and Saban feel like there may be a little bit more in Jalen Milroe than the mainstream fan is giving Jalen Milroe credit for? Because I think people think he's a scrub.
I think certainly that obviously that's what they're hoping. And I think deep down, that's probably what they need. They are believing that because it's another year of development. I mean, again, I just pulled up this box score from the A&M game, 12 of 19, and they ran it 51 times, Ketch, 51. The other thing I forgot about that game, Bama had 4 turnovers. You want to know why the Aggies had that shot at the end? 4 turnovers. Milroe lost 2 of those. He fumbled twice and lost both. McClellan had a fumble as well. So the Aggies only had 1 turnover going on the road. Bama laid 4 turnovers out there. There's no way To me, it can be that kind of sloppy. Again, remember, that's him filling in. That's Milroe who had to play. This theoretically is the Milroe that gets to play and maybe tries to make you a little bit of a little bit more right about your Donovan McNabb thing, where they've got to trust the arm a little more. They've got to develop these young receivers. He brings up an interesting point with Reese. Can Tommy Reese dial up some tight end ideas that he had at Notre Dame? I would argue Bama's wasted some tight ends over these last few runs.
They never got even the most out of O.J. Howard that they should have.
No, and that was really the most they did. Lane Kiffin helped him get the Bucs' attention to where they drafted him. Outside of that, I didn't think they've done a great job, but that really is. There's a lot of fascinating stories about
They're going to try to run the ball 50 times against Texas.
Right. Again, 51 carries against A&M. And did I forget to tell you they ran for 5.6 a carry? They chopped the Aggies up.
Well, and that was an offensive line that when we saw them in Austin, I was not impressed. Yeah. But it was J.C. Latham's second game of his life at Alabama. It was a group that hadn't come together. To hear him admit that, right? Because he's saying this offensive line for Bama is going to be badass. But it wasn't badass a year ago. And I think that, Texas fans are hoping that their offensive line does what Alabama's offensive line does. But we're not talking about the Texas offensive line right now like Kyle's talking about the Alabama offensive line.
No, and if the Proctor kid is that good out on the left side, that's huge. How loud he is in the game is a big deal. He wants it to be quiet. He wants it to be no report. He wants it to be like that badass trash man you got that always gets his or her job done and you never notice him. That's what Proctor needs to be. If he's that, then that game takes on a whole different mindset. But taking everything else out of it, Ketch, just these two quarterbacks on September 9th. Like, this game's got 20 different layers on both sides. But even if you just want to focus on those two guys, holy mackerel. Whoever wins it, the rocket that gets put on their back for the rest of the season, and the guy that loses it, especially if it's Milroe. If he plays the whole game and loses, then can we agree he doesn't quarterback the next big game they have?
I don't know.
If Texas beats them, I mean, how would Bama fans allow him to – how do Bama fans and coaches and everybody allow him to keep going?
Saban's so stubborn, though. Yeah. If Saban believes that that's the best option that he has, he didn't care about outside noise. He almost, to spite outside noise, he'll go against the grain and do – there are a lot of people, again, they didn't think Mac Jones should have been the starter. They thought –
yeah, that was a great point.
Put Bryce Young in there from day one and let him go. And you know what? Like, they probably still would have won as many games as they did with Mac Jones, but Mac Jones ended up having a great year. Jalen Hurts, who is a top 5 NFL quarterback right now. Mm-hmm. They had him and Tua at the same time. The levels and standards are so high. Jalen Milroe's playing against ghosts as much as he's playing against anything else. It's this idea now, 10 years ago, Alabama didn't have a quarterback. They've pulled off essentially the Oklahoma quarterback run, where for a half a decade or more, you just got nothing but NFL players. And then we saw what happened at Oklahoma when, I guess the last guy would have been Jalen Hurts, right? When he's gone, what comes next after that, it can be difficult. And I think we've seen that at Alabama when you go from, Hurts and Tua and Mac Jones and Bryce Young and all, the worst guy of the bunch is a second-round draft pick who's now taking a team to the Super Bowl. And now there's a drop-off. That's what Texas experienced, that coming out of Colt McCoy. That's Garrett Gilbert shows up, doesn't live up to the fuss, and then it's Case McCoy, and then it's David Ash, and then it's, Tyrone Swoops, and then it's, Shane Buechele, and then it's Sam Ehlinger, and you pinch in a little bit of everything in between there, and it never quite happens. Even now, we're talking about Quinn Ewers being a 7.5 or a 6.5, 6.7, trying to get up to 7, but they need him to be an 8 or above. They're still waiting on it. And so that game's so fast. You're right. There's 500 ways to talk about that game.
Yeah, there is. And I think there's a lot of things Kyle brought up, but you just said it in kind of, as we reiterate here and just about to wrap it up. What he said about the offensive line might be the most important thing that he said. If Nick Saban has a badass offensive line, we've all seen what that looks like. This is a coach that we can argue doesn't need a badass quarterback at times, or even like an OC and DC that he's familiar with. Like, we've seen teams that are that good, that talented, where it can work. Can it work in 23? I don't know. To win it all, I don't know that. But to beat Texas on September 9th, if he's got a badass offensive line, he's at home, he can run the ball, and his defense is pretty damn good, man, we've seen him win a lot of big games that way. We've seen him choke a lot of teams out that way. So I think that might be the most important thing Kyle said, that offensive line may be on that level. If he's seen all he's seen and he thinks they're badass, that's something to keep in mind for Pete Kwiatkowski and the Texas defense. You got to crack that wall or you may not have a shot.
Bama's going to try to win that game blood and guts.
Yep.
And Saban in his mind is saying, we don't need to win the quarterback battle. We need to own the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football, and they won't beat us with their quarterback if our defense is controlling their offensive line and our defense is and our offensive line is controlling their defensive line, which, oh, by the way, is easier said than done. Like, I don't quite know what to think about the Texas offensive line, but we think this Texas defensive line is going to put up one hell of a battle against that Alabama offensive line.
Yep.
I'm now more excited about that game. I know we've got to get through Rice first.
Hey, 11 days. 11 days to
I'm
Rice.
more excited about the Alabama game now than I've been at any point that we've talked about that game during this offseason.
Absolutely. And then back to your blood and guts comment. If Nick Saban wants to go blood and guts, how many times have you seen somebody go to Tuscaloosa and out blood and guts him? How will Sark go about it? Is he going to try to out bloody Nick? Or is he going to try to walk in there and really go after it and put the show in his face and test that defense? Like, how do you do it? If Nick's going to try to drain the clock and just let that crowd wear on you and let a running game wear on you. Nick, one thing I know about Nick Saban, Ketch, he is perfectly comfortable beating you 14-13. He is.
You know what they call 14-13? A win.
10-7. I'll never forget that year they went to Fayetteville, won 14-13, and the fans wanted him fired. There were Bama fans wanting his job that day, and he just kind of laughed it off like, we won. On to the next one.
Counts the same as 70-0, man.
Woo, yeah. How do you if he can get a team that's comfortable winning 17-14, how do you go beat that in Tuscaloosa if you don't get a lot of opportunities? It's going to be fascinating to watch how Texas attacks him.
We're wrapping the show up. I want to remind everybody in 30 minutes-ish, the man, the myth, the legend, Alex Dunlap makes his debut as show host here on Orangebloods Live, Football with Friends.
How about that?
He just wants to have a good old time, talk Texas football. Have you ever heard him on a Sirius XM show, Chad?
I have heard it a little bit. It is a different world. For people that have heard Alex on breaking things down on Orangebloods Live and you haven't heard him on the Sirius XM show, it is a different world. Just wait.
He's a maniac on that show.
Just wait. And apparently, Ketch, he's going to have like a different theme for every show. And we are told that today's theme for the people is smoked and grilled meats. So apparently it's a smoked and grilled meats day on Football with Friends. I'm not even exactly sure what that means. That's what I'm telling you right now.
I haven't had lunch yet. So I had the Bush's chicken root beer, but I haven't had the meats.
Smoked and grilled meats.
And I don't think he means Arby's either.
I do not think he means that. No, there's no beef and cheddar, I don't think, in his discussion today. Although I had one of those recently, still tasty.
Hey, it cracked. My son has never eaten at Arby's ever.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, he'll walk by and go, "We got the meats."
Arby's, we have the meats. See, it's all that's good and bad news for Arby's. The fact that he repeats it all the time is good news. The fact that he's never been is not good news. That tells me that the advertising is working to a point. Right? It's supposed to get him to the store though, and if it's not, it does. It's like me. I'll walk around the house
drive a car, so it's not his fault.
No, that's true. But like, I'll walk around the house going, oh, Ozempic, but I have no idea what it is. That doesn't mean it's working in that it's in my head. I couldn't tell you what that product does. I have no idea.
All right, let's say goodbye. Let's put the ball on the tee with Alex. He'll be on in 31 minutes and change.
Come on.
Sign us off.
All right.
By the way, I am at the Texas Card House.
That's right.
How do I do it so that I can show everybody it's not working? There's a dealer behind my shoulder, and he has been all day.
Yes, the dealer who apparently is like a crazed chef from a movie. I can't tell who. It's like Oliver Platt as a chef who might kill someone. Is who that looks like on the wall.
It looks like Daniel Negreanu, the poker player.
Okay.
So maybe it's not a dealer.
Maybe it's a player.
He just has a whole bunch of chips in front of him.
Okay. I think you may be right. Yeah, I see it now. Okay, you're right. That's chips. That's a player. Texas Card House. If you're into the card game, get on out there. 183 and Anderson Mill, I believe, is that spot at Texas Card House. So, Ketch, have a safe trip. Get back. You be back at the homestead tomorrow, or are you going to be somewhere else? Okay.
Won't have to borrow anybody's mic. I'll be good to go tomorrow. Back to the routine.
There it is. Alex Dunlap live. Football with Friends debuts at 3:30 this afternoon, and we will be back tomorrow with another edition of House Divided at noon. Anwar, of course, will have the old-fashioned for you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock as well. Thank you for liking and subscribing to Orangebloods Live. Thanks to all of the support you have been giving us. Have a safe one. Stay cool out there. To Buck Wild, Longhorn, and all those truck drivers. Be safe out there, too. Be kind to the person in the other lane, would you? We will talk to you tomorrow.